All right, we're going to call today's Housing, Urban Development, and Zoning Committee meeting to order. Good morning, everyone. Madam Clerk, we can call the roll.
Alderman Cone,
Present.
Alderwoman Schweitzer, Alderwoman Sanye, Alderman Browning, Chair Clark Hubbard,
Here.
Alderwoman Sanye. We have 4 present. You have a quorum.
All right. With that, I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes from Tuesday, December 5th, 2023.
So moved.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer, Alderwoman Sanye, Alderman Browning, Chair Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye. You have 4 aye votes.
All right, with that, we have approved the minutes from Tuesday, December 5th. We are going to adjust this agenda a little bit out of respect for people's time. We don't want anybody to feel rushed in their testimonies this morning. I'm excited to see such a full room. Excited to get the business done of HUD's, what the HUD's committee was created for here in the city of St. Louis. And I'm glad that all of you all are taking the time out of your schedules to engage and participate in this very important part of this process here. So with that, I'm going to adjust and take item number 2 first. That is item number 2, Board Bill 167, introduced by Alderman Browning. And Madam Clerk, you can read the preamble. I can say some.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
We can go ahead and read the summary while he's calling up
Okay.
his guest.
Board Bill number 167, introduced by Alderman Michael Browning, co-sponsors Alderwoman Shameen Clark Hubbard. An ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission in approving an amended community unit for an area in the city of St. Louis and compromising a portion of the Washington University Medical Center, pledging cooperation of the Board of Aldermen and requesting various officials, departments, boards, and agencies of the city to cooperate and exercise their powers in a manner consistent with the amended community unit plan, authorizing and directing the taking of other actions and approval and execution of other documents as necessary or describable to carry out and comply with the intent hereof and the amended community unit plan.
Well, good morning, committee. Thank you for having us this morning, and good morning to everybody here. This should be a real simple and straightforward bill. Board Bill number 167 simply amends the boundaries of the Washington University Community Unit Plan. This is basically a setup to make sure that every time Washington University needs to do something within its area pertaining to the actions of the medical center, they are able to do so without having to come before this board to do a zoning change. The community unit plan allows them to do uses all within what you would normally see within a medical center, but if we were to leave this to individual bills every single time, we would be very busy down here at HUD's, and Washington University Medical Center would be delayed in the actions they need to take every single time. So we established this community unit plan in order to really make the whole thing easier. And I have Washington University here, as well as somebody from our planning and design agency to speak to this bill if you have any questions. So I'll let them come up at this time and speak, and then we can take your questions.
When you come up to speak, I'm just going to ask that you say your name and the organization you're with.
Good morning. Miriam Keller, City Planning Executive with the City of St. Louis Planning and Urban Design Agency.
Mary Burton, the Zoning Administrator with the Building Division.
Good morning. Robert Blaine, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Medical Public Policy at Washington University, here on behalf of our School of Medicine and our partner teaching hospitals, BJC, Barnes-Jewish, and Children's Hospital, which make up the WashU Medical Campus.
You may proceed. Oh, I have to swear you in. I'm so sorry. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Yes, we did provide some slides. I don't know if those are loaded or.
Did you send them to the clerk? Okay. They're in the drive. Did you want me to just, I can run and go grab my laptop to pull up. You want to go through a presentation? Okay, give
That's
me
possible.
one.
That would help.
I gotta get one moment.
Okay, while she's grabbing her laptop for the presentation, I'll go ahead and remind everyone who wants to speak to make sure they sign up on the sign-in sheet. And there are a few scattered chairs, single chairs, and we can probably move these chairs if you all want chairs to sit down. Are you guys okay? You want to go ahead, catch up with the slides? Okay.
Yeah, there are parts of this where visuals would be really helpful, but I can start by introducing the subject in a little bit more detail. What staff wanted to share as background on this board bill was basically a version of what was presented to the City of St. Louis Planning Commission. We brought this to the Planning Commission for their review and recommendation to the Board of Aldermen. And so that presentation and what I wanted to share today is an overview of the community unit plan amendment that this board bill would enact if enacted as ordinance. So the current, just at the highest level here, the current Washington University Medical Center community unit plan was actually approved back in 2008 and has been amended 2 times since then, once in 2011 and once in 2015. So this proposed amendment is really kind of the third in what has become a routine process of amendment to make sure that the community unit plan boundaries accurately reflect the boundaries of the Washington University Medical Center and its affiliates' property ownership and their development plans. So what is a community unit plan? We'll refer to it as CUP or CUP for short in discussion, but it is basically a type of overlay zoning district enabled by the city's zoning code. And what it does, which is a little bit different from some of our other overlay zoning districts like special use districts or phase code, is that it is really kind of attuned to owners of large areas of land who are, and in this case, 15 acres, 15 contiguous acres or more, areas of acres of land, who are kind of working in concert with some long-term vision for an area's development. So Washington University Medical Center is one example of where we have a community unit plan in place. There's also another community unit plan in place at the Washington University Danforth campus. And exactly as Alderman Browning described, this overlay allows for a kind of coordinated development within certain parameters set by that initial ordinance that would be basically impossible or just very arduous in terms of the number of rezonings and variances that would be required if development in the Washington University Medical Center campus relied on use of our underlying zoning districts and diversions from those. So what this community unit plan does that was put in place in 2008 is it allows for greater heights and density than in our underlying zoning districts. It allows for a broader range of uses, so things like healthcare, research, and so on, things that are kind of don't have a perfect fit in our underlying zoning districts and what they allow. And exactly as the Alderman noted, this prevents the need for numerous variances each year through its flexibility and other regulations that are really tailored to the unique needs of this area. This proposed amendment includes 5 properties that are proposed to be added to the boundaries of the Washington University Medical Center Community Unit Plan, or CUP. And the slides will help us kind of see what those are and where they are in the context of that district. Maybe what I can do is kind of continue describing each of these and then quickly show the visuals to make sure the members of the committee know what I was describing. So the first is a property on 4367 Duncan Avenue, just east of Newstead, that is currently owned by Washington University and has a proposed long-term use of medical center development or structured parking serving other medical center development or facilities. Properties 2 through 4 are all small properties facing Forest Park Avenue, again, just east of Newstead Avenue and west of the Cortex 1 building on Boyle Avenue and Forest Park Avenue. And these are currently being used as surface parking and have a proposed long-term use of medical center development, again, owned by Washington University. The 5th property is a larger property just east of Boyle Avenue. This property includes the BJC at the Commons building, which is a 5-story office building, as well as surface parking. The owner here is BJC Health System, which is it's kind of one of the affiliates of the Washington University Medical Center kind of entity to which the community unit plan applies. This is also just south of the Cortex Metrolink station. I'll also quickly describe that by ordinance, all amendments to the community unit plan are evaluated using 3 criteria. These were presented in relatively more detail at the Planning Commission, but what I'll share in the context of today's presentation is that this amendment does comply with all 3 criteria, as well as the strategic land use plan against which we evaluate all zoning amendments in the city.
What are those 3 requirements?
Yeah, so the alderman asked, oh, thank you, Mary, much larger text, me to share the 3 evaluation criteria that by ordinance we use to evaluate either community unit plans or their amendments. The first is that the values of buildings and the character of the property adjacent to the area included in the plan or such an amendment will not be adversely affected. All of the adjacent properties in this case are actually within the community unit plan or otherwise owned by Washington University Medical Center or an affiliate. So for that reason, and because these properties' future development under the parameters of the community unit plan will allow for the ongoing growth of the medical center and all of the services that are provided by Washington University Medical Center, we found that this amendment does meet that first criteria. The second evaluation criteria is that the said plan is consistent with the overall intent and purposes of the zoning code, which are to promote public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Of course, sounds like a very broad criteria. But again, because this amendment would allow for Washington University Medical Center to continue providing those services to the immediate community and the surrounding region, we find that it was in keeping. The third criteria has to do with average lot area per family contained in the site. This one is really more oriented to residential development. It doesn't apply in this case. None of the proposed future uses are residential, nor, well, yeah, I'll leave it there. Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll ask Mary if there are any items you wanted to add before asking for any questions.
Um, Thanks, Miriam. Not really any items to add, just another example of how the community can helps the medical center. Many of the underlying zoning districts within their district do not allow for like the height of the buildings that they need for their purposes. So as the Alderman and Miriam both alluded to, it keeps them from having to come back to the Board of Adjustment every time they need a variance for height, and it's just a good business practice.
Since we have them in our drive, I would be amenable to just going
Yeah, I was going
and
to say
forward.
the slides are in the board bills folder in the drive. And if the committee would like to look at the maps, which I think are a little helpful to understanding where these lots are, that would be the place to look, and we can walk through that way. We are having some technical difficulties in trying to get this up on the screen today.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, with that, I can go ahead and if anyone else wants to speak, or we can ask, see if our colleagues have any questions.
Again, we just wanted to thank the committee for considering this legislation today. For a campus which is currently 142 acres, having a consistent set of zoning guidelines is really helpful. Again, the underlying zoning, there's 6 different types. So anytime we think about a project, we have to keep that in mind. And so having this tool in place so that we have one uniform set of guidelines has been incredibly helpful over the years. We just wanted to thank Alderman Browning for sponsoring this and Chair Clark Hubbard for co-sponsoring the legislation, and we're just here to answer any questions the committee may have.
All right, Alderman Cone.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here today. So I've had some conversations about this previously already, having the benefit of serving on the Planning Commission, and then also met with representatives from WashU, Washington University, to just get their input and share some of my thoughts. Part of that discussion, one of the things that I brought to their attention is my frustration with development that frequently takes place at the university that closes sidewalks and access along those sidewalks. There was an ordinance that was passed back in 2020. It was sponsored by Alderwoman Christine Ingracia that requires institutions, developers to provide a reason as to why sidewalks would need to be closed for public safety or health reasons. And I'm curious because after our conversation and after the Planning Commission, I went down Forest Park Parkway, and it's yet again closed. The north side, or I'm sorry, it's on the south side of Forest Park Parkway. The entire sidewalk for a block is just absolutely blocked off, and it's very angering for someone who supports multimodal transit, wants to be considerate of the safety for pedestrians and cyclists, and those that might be in wheelchairs or those that might have strollers. I consider you all to be one of the good stewards of our city, and would expect you to lead by example, and that is not happening with respect to these types of projects that happen. And I'm curious, what is the reason that you all provide to the city streets department that allows you to close off these sidewalks like that? I mean,
Yeah, no, Alderman Cohn, we appreciate the question. We appreciated the chance to have that conversation with you a few weeks ago. We did actually go back to our facilities team because I was curious. I thought those were valid questions brought forward. So the project you're referencing specifically involves the construction of a new 600,000 square foot cancer facility on Forest Park Avenue. It was a vacant lot beforehand, and that project also involves parking that's underneath the building, and so significant digging down in order to put that parking garage and then the facility on top. For that project in particular, when we worked with the city in terms of the approvals, we requested a closure of a lane of Forest Park Avenue. And so you can, and in order to provide for staging and logistics for the construction project. And so I think after evaluation with the city, there was really no way, if you're going to be having staging in that closed lane of traffic, to maintain a safe pedestrian access on the sidewalk. And so whenever each project is unique, and we evaluate each project in terms of the needs of the construction project, maintaining pedestrian access, but also maintaining pedestrian safety. Now, what you raised, I think, is a really important point, is if we're diverting pedestrian traffic, or if pedestrians are still going to follow the path of least resistance and put themselves into unsafe situations, that's something we need to factor into that calculation. And a contrast, though, is for our neuroscience building, which the construction is about complete. We closed Newstead Avenue in that case, but we maintained sidewalk access throughout the construction project. We put scaffolding. There was still the ability of pedestrians to get up and down Newstead during that time. And so it just, I think, again, we hear your feedback. We learn from each project. We try to do better each time. We'll definitely keep that into consideration. But again, I think we just try to balance the needs of the construction project with making sure we're keeping pedestrians as safe as possible.
And I hear you, and I appreciate that you have taken those steps on Newstead, but Forest Park is absolutely probably one of the busier streets in that area of town, particularly high volume of vehicular traffic, high rates of speed as well. And when you have an entire block that is shut down to pedestrian traffic, it absolutely endangers people's lives, both from folks that are walking, and again, there's a lot of seniors that live in that area. There's a lot of people, that have to use, wheelchairs over in that area. I see them all the time. And that's something that is a struggle. And I, as a healthcare facility as well, I would certainly think that you all would identify with that. And with the particular project on Forest Park, sure, you can close the street off, but you should still be providing some level of pedestrian access along the side of that construction site. This happens literally everywhere in the country, in major cities across this country, where people have to dig a big hole. They shut down the street or necessary public right-of-way in order to safely complete the project, but they also provide a safe method for pedestrians to circumvent that project as well. So I would, again, encourage you all to review that, and certainly it's something that I'll be following up with the city streets department and the Board of Public Service. I continually get frustrated. That was a bill that I supported back in 2020. I was the initial, sponsor of the city's complete streets policy back in, I hate to say, probably 2010. But I certainly, respect the work that you all are trying to do on the campus and in the city. And that's all the questions that I had for today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here in that presentation. Can you give a little timeline information about when you expect work to be done on these?
At least in terms of current construction on campus. So our neuroscience building, most of the exterior work is done. There's still internal fit out of some additional lab space, which is going to occur over an additional year, but we're in the process of moving into that building as we speak. The cancer building on Forest Park Avenue has about another year of construction. We're hoping to start moving people in next fall and having patient appointments by the end of 2024. There is also a construction project in the center of our campus, the Institute of Health building. We've added 6 stories of lab space. Again, about another year of construction. We're hoping to reopen the pedestrian garden area right out front of that and at the same time. And then the last project would be the new bed tower that Barnes Jewish is building at the corner of Kings Highway and Barnes Jewish Plaza. That's got about 2 more years worth of construction before that will be complete and starting to see patient activity.
Okay, thank you. And in regards to Alderman Cohn's question, that was going to be one of mine as well. I'm very concerned about pedestrian access and making sure folks can still use the sidewalks. Can we get any sort of assurance from you that there will be a plan for that, or how will you move from here forward?
Well, as I indicated before, I mean, we have shared this feedback with our facilities team. I think we're hearing loud and clear that this needs to be part of our plan and our conversations with the city in terms of how to stage these projects. Again, every project is a little different. And so again, I can commit to continuing to keep this as a focus as we work on these projects. And again, we think these are important things, and we want to continually improve and do better.
Thank you. Will any of this work interfere with folks going to the metro stations or any transit?
No, that's a
blockages?
good question. I mean, no, we think of, for the medical campus, the Central West End and the Cortex stations as being kind of key access points. There's also a bus station by the Central West End station. Those have maintained access. We improved that Central West End station a couple of years ago, and that's key to our ability to get people to campus without taking cars. No, we don't anticipate any disruptions to public transit service.
Thank you. And in terms of encouraging folks to be able to use the public transit, I heard a few times parking lots mentioned. Is it adding new parking lots to this project or removing parking lots for new buildings? Can you clarify a little bit?
So with the neuroscience building, which is we just wrapped up, that part of that project included a parking structure adjacent to the building. But again, we work really hard to make sure we're encouraging alternate modes of transportation to campus. The university provides free, we purchase Metro cards for all our employees, students, and contract employees, and issued about 23,000 of them last year. And so that's a significant component to us, not only keeping cars off the road, but mitigating the need for parking structures, because we'd rather be investing in clinical facilities or research facilities.
Have you seen that make a change? How many of your employees are generally using public transportation?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't
Track
seen
that anyway.
Yeah, when we first unrolled that universal program, and this was back in 2006 or 2007, we had recorded several thousand employees turning in their parking tag and just choosing to take transit instead. I take transit every day to that central station. It works well for my commute. And so again, most of that metro use is by our med center employees and students. I mean, that's Central West End Station is the busiest station in the entire Alliance. Mm-hmm. And we very much want to make sure that is a viable and attractive stop, because it's central to everything we do.
Thank you. I really appreciate that commitment. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Vice Chair Sanya.
Thank you. I don't have any questions at this time.
All right, Alderman Browning, did you have anything else you wanted to come on?
I just appreciate the committee's concern for pedestrian access. I share the same concerns. I know the Central West End Metrolink station is the busiest station on the line consistently year after year, and that's most likely because of the medical center and both patients, staff, and faculty that are using that station to commute to work. I appreciate Washington University as a partner, and I really appreciate them coming here today to be available to answer questions to you all. So with that, I would ask for your favorable consideration and do pass recommendation from the committee.
All right, I'll accept the motion for Board Bill 167.
I move that we pass Board Bill 167 out with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous
roll.
Seeing no objections. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's make sure Alderwoman Vice Chair Sanye was on that previous roll.
I know. No.
Objection.
Objection.
All right, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye,
Aye.
Alderman Browning,
Aye.
Chair Clark Hubbard. We have 5 aye votes.
All right, congratulations, Board Bill 167. With that, we will move on. I do see some more people. We have a few chairs back here. Can we move those to see if some of our guests need a seat if they don't have a seat, especially some elders that I see that are in the room? Just want to make sure everyone is comfortable. Okay, and we will move now to Board Bill 129. Alderman Aldridge, you're recognized on Board Bill 129.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Today, I am continuing the conversation around Board Bill 129, which we know is the development that is happening at 400 South Tucker, 400 South 14th Street. It is currently the Oyo Hotel. What is unique about this current hotel, unlike most hotels in the city, this isn't just a only hotel ran. We have 71 condo owners who live in this building as well, that have been living in this building for over 15 years. The hotel have seen some brighter days, and more recently in the last maybe 10 plus years, it hasn't seen some positive impact because of the people that was running it has left, which has put not just a hindrance, I would say, on the people that live in this hotel, but also just the investment of such a beautiful building. It's a hotel, we know when we get off of Highway 40 and 14th Street, has a beautiful mural outside. It's right across the street from the Enterprise Center. It's right across the street from the Metro, so very close to transit. But since this hotel haven't had some investment in quite some time, it is one of those hotels people actually don't go to that is so close to the Enterprise Center. When the Blues are playing the Blackhawks, they can go somewhere else. There's been several conversations, as committee members know. To give a little background history, this bill was filed in early October. It was brought to my attention that there was previous legislation passed by this Board of Aldermen in February from Alderman Cone that puts in input when it comes to development. Not saying that it's required, but it says that you should get a letter, again, not requirements for the projects to move, but you should get a letter from residents, community stakeholders, and labor. That was brought to my attention after talking with Midas about the plan that they wanted to do and ensure that we had labor input. As I said last week, I stand on it, probably outside of the president. I am one of the most been there, not just for labor, but as somebody who is part of the Fight 15, and a lot of labor has stood behind me in that fight. I'm 100% labor and probably the second most laborist person down at this board. So what I end up doing is I got in contact with Kim from Unite Here, who is doing great work when it comes to our hotels and making sure those workers are represented, especially service employee workers. We like to always talk about unions, and I think sometimes we don't forget that our service employee workers that are unionized between Unite Here and SEIU are the brown and black, those most underserved workers that really need representation. So I got in contact with Kim and the development company to make sure that those conversations can start happening of what does a labor harmony looks like. Since October, there has been 3 conversations between the developer and Unite Here representatives that wanted to have conversation of how do we move forward in a labor harmony way. At the same time, I've also had the opportunity to tour the hotel and meet a lot of fabulous residents that live in that building, and I've been able to just see the conditions firsthand in that building. There's going to be, I know from my committee members, a lot of questions. There's been a lot of back and forth between information since our last committee hearing, which I think all information is important and that the committee can be able to address that. I would say my goal of trying to get somewhere with this piece of legislation is, one, to ensure that there is some type of labor harmony when it comes to the development and the people and workers, the workers that are not there yet, but that will potentially be working in this hotel, as well as to give hope to the current residents, the 71 condo owners that have been living in this hotel for, like I say, over a decade, wanting to stay in the city, wanting to stay in this building, which their condos, they pay for. It's not ran by the hotel. They have been keeping up with all the upkeep as their places have kind of also went down due to the hotel. If it's a pool leaking on people's floor, they continue to make sure that their building is nice because they love this place and they want to stay there. and they are asking for some help and have been asking for help for a very long time. I know this is it's been a very hard conversation because we want to make sure we protect the current residents as well as we want to protect future residents. And I think this is also a unique development by not just being a full hotel. We have to take into account, it's easy for us to speak on it, but a lot of these people are the ones who will go back home today, or they went back home last week after committee hearing and still have to live the conditions of where they currently are. So with that, I will either entertain questions from the committee. I know we have Midas here. I know we have SLDC here again. We have residents, we have labor, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of conversations, but I'm not sure who'd you want to come up first, Madam Clerk, or Madam Chair?
That's okay. Well, first I want to commend you, Alderman, for taking this additional time here in the committee where these conversations should happen, right, in public, in full transparency, knowing that in the middle, a lot of times in these conversations is where the change happens. So thank you for that. Thank you again for everyone that's here to participate. I hope everybody that's here has signed up so that we can hear from you all. I'm going to do it one time so that we don't hold up the testimonies. Anybody that has signed up, can you please raise your hand, and the clerk is going to swear you in.
If you're wanting to speak, if you signed up to speak, if you could raise your right hand. And do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, you may proceed.
All right, Madam Clerk, you can begin with the list.
If I could have Earlene Jones. Ms. Jones, you have 3 minutes. If you'll repeat your full name for me, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Earlene Jones. I'm president of the Missouri Alliance for Retired Americans Education Fund, as well as the newly elected president of CWA chapter retirees in the district. I come today, because it's my understanding that they're refusing to negotiate a neutrality agreement in good faith. And I've had a little history with that. It has had agreements. But I just want to let you know what I do know. And history has shown that neutrality agreements are a win-win for business leaders and unions. They improve productivity and problem-solving business leaders are recognizing. The benefits of partnering with unions to give workers a voice on the job. When a company commits to neutrality, workers are not scared to lose their jobs. And when they're not scared, they are more productive. The best investment in the company can make a difference to their people. But I just want to let you know that I support them negotiating in good faith with the unions. Net neutrality is something that is not new. It's happening all over the country. And we should have a part and a say in our lives and in our jobs. So that's all I have to say. I just wanted to be here, in support of that, and thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Mr. David Robert, are you speaking? Okay. Janice Corpus.
Good morning. My name is Janessa Corpus. I actually wrote down what I want to say so I wouldn't ramble. But I am a current resident of St. Louis City, as well as an area general manager for Midas Hospitality. I've worked for Midas for 5 years and currently running the Element Hotel on Forest Park. So I just wanted to speak to you all about Midas and what Midas offers, as well as my team at the Element. So in starting and working for Midas, all of the upper leadership has always told us that they are a people-first business and that we do what it takes to make room for our employees' dreams. So me working for different management companies, I just assumed that this was just something that they were just feeding us and their onboarding, right? Well, I've come to find that this company definitely speaks on and acts on what they preach and what they speak. So just a couple of examples that I've had with the company. Just last month, I took my team bowling to celebrate their accomplishments on our scores and some revenue accomplishments. And unfortunately, at the end of the evening, we had 9 of our employee vehicles, windows broken, and their cars rambled in. So with the help of Midas and upper leadership, none of my employees had to pay to have those windows replaced. So again, they preach what they say. I've had an employee that had a daughter that passed that did not have the money to pay for the funeral as well as repast. Again, our company helped her with that. So Element opened in November 13th of 2020. Our starting wages at the time was $11.52. Currently, as of January 2023, that starting wage has increased between $15.50 and $16. So every year, we're doing increases to ensure that our employees are being paid a fair wage. Our housekeepers currently clean 14 vacant rooms a day. Anytime they have any rooms above that, they are paid an additional $5 per room. Midas also offers our employees a 401k that is matched every paycheck after 1 year. Medical benefits are also offered at a reasonable price with a healthcare savings account that they deposit $20 per paycheck into that account in order to help our employees offset some of that cost. We have some, thank you guys.
If we have questions of those testifying, we're allowed to ask those as well. Yeah. I think now is probably the most appropriate. Oh, okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Janessa Corpus.
Janessa, thank you for being here today. I'm just going to also ask of anyone that comes to testify, if you are a resident of the city of St. Louis, can you please also share which ward you live in? I believe the clerk normally asks that as well.
I live in the 12th ward.
Okay, great, thank you. So how long have you been employed with Midas?
5 years.
5 years, okay. And then during your testimony, one of the things that you mentioned was that there's a standard, I guess, for housekeeping that they, during their shift, clean 14 rooms as the expectation. Is that an 8-hour shift?
Yes, and that's the maximum is 14 unless they purchase more room.
Okay, and then so the expectation is a maximum of 14, and then you said an extra $5 per room. What's the, and I'm trying to do the math in my head here, but what's the average time spent per room?
Our minutes per room is, I want to say about 36 to 38 minutes per room.
Okay, so is that?
And that's what they work currently.
Right, so that would essentially, if they would still get their base pay plus an additional $5 per room. Is that correct?
So if they clean above the 14 room standard, then yes, they get paid $5 for each additional room.
Plus their base pay.
Yes, sorry.
And then have you had situations with, well, let me rephrase this. How many employees that work for you on your team are full-time, meaning they work 32 hours a week or more?
Oh, I don't know that answer. I can, do you have it? You have it?
Okay. Right.
She has the sheet with.
In 2 minutes, okay. I think that's all the questions I have for now, but thank you for
course.
being here this morning.
Of course.
Very much appreciate it.
And if there's anything else that you wanted to share, please feel free to email it to us. We can share it.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have John Karlhoft in opposition. And what ward do you reside?
I'm actually representative for the Electrical Workers Local 1 in the
Okay.
St. Louis. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to address the committee this afternoon. My name is John Karhoff, and I'm here today representing the 5,600 members of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Local 1, more than 2,000 retirees. Midas Hospitality, the construction arm of Midas Hospitality, has a notorious long-term history of selecting subcontractors on their construction projects that undercut the established wage and benefit standards for this region for the craft trades. I think that's an important consideration, and I am a supporter of Alderman Aldridge. I think I appreciate him bringing us into the discussion. I think these are important facts to consider when you talk about many of our members that reside in the city and contribute to the tax revenue, that their interests and their living standards are protected when you look at a project of this magnitude in the city. And I think that we can ensure, especially on a project where the residents may stay in the building while the construction is going on, I think there needs to be a discussion with the craft trades to ensure that the project can be done on time, under budget, and safely for the residents that are going to reside in the structure itself. But before we subsidize this, we need to make sure that the living standards of these city residents that I represent are protected. Thank you, and thank you for your service to the city.
Thank you. May I have Lou Moyer? Lou Moyes? In opposition. Good morning.
Check, check, 1, 2. To our distinguished aldermen and alderwomen of the HUS Committee, I bring greetings from the St. Louis chapter of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists. My name is Lou Moy. I live at 4472 Bircher Boulevard, 12th Ward, for 46 years. For years, although my house hasn't moved, I've been in the 20th and 21st Ward. It's based on how they draw the lines of the wards. But I've been there at the same location, raised a family. My children raised there for 46 years. I'm a retiree. First of all, I'm a veteran. I spent 3 years in the Army, spent times in Germany as well. I'm a retiree of the former Chrysler Corporation assembly plant in Fenton, Missouri, having worked there for 44 years. I'm also a proud member of the United Automobile Workers Union. In 6 months, if God's willing, I will have served 60 years as a member of the UAW. Not only was I just a member, I was chairman of a 4,000-member union and also served for years on the international bargaining team, which the UAW just completed successful bargaining, including negotiating Juneteenth as a holiday for all auto workers. I'm also president emeritus of the St. Louis chapter of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists. I'm one of the founding members of the St. Louis chapter with 50 years of continued service with that organization. I'm here today because I believe all working people should have the freedom to join a union to make their workplaces better and negotiate for the wages and benefits they deserve. Today, the HUD's committee is being asked to support Board Bill 129 for Midas Hospitality request of 75% tax abatement to rehab the old Sheraton Hotel. If passed, Board Bill
I'm sorry,
120
Mr. Moore, that's your time.
Mhm.
You are
I'm-
more than
I'm-
welcome to submit your comments to the Board of Alderman Clerk.
Yeah, but I do want to raise a question. I timed some of the people that were up here prior to me, and they was way past 3 minutes.
No, sir, they were not.
I mean,
But
I
I'll
was-
leave
It
it up to
probably were, he
the chair.
may be referring to like some of our speakers that were with the aldermen, and you know, out of respect for you, I want you to finish your statement that you were making, and then please submit or reach out to us. You know, all of us are accessible to you. Reach out to us with the rest of your comments so that we can share them, not with ourselves, but with our colleagues as well.
You're saying I can finish?
I'm asking you to please finish your
Okay.
statement.
Thank you, I appreciate it. But if the board bill is passed, it would be somewhat millions of dollars of a handout for Midas Hospitality as developer of the old Sheraton Hotel, and which they also would not agree, while they're getting a handout from taxpayers, they would not agree for a neutrality agreement where the workers, once this is completed, the workers in that hotel will be guaranteed the freedom to organize a union without interference. And the best example of this happening in this city is the Marriott Hotel over on Washington, which is a union hotel. Years ago, right here in this same building, this same room, Marriott was refusing to sign a neutrality agreement. But after Alderman Kenny Jones and others met with them, they agreed. And once that hotel was completed, a union was organized, which is still there today. And unions from all over the country come and have events at that hotel as a result of that. So the St. Louis chapter of the Coalition of Black Trade Unions is asking a no vote on this because of their refusal to sign or agree to a neutrality agreement, as has been done, as what was done over at the Marriott as well. So I'm asking you, all of you, to use your good judgment and vote no. I want to close with a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as he was speaking to striking black sanitation workers at the Mason Temple, Memphis, Tennessee, on April the 3rd, 1968, the night before he was assassinated. Quote, "Our needs are identical with labor unions: decent wages, fair working conditions, livable housing, old age security, health and welfare measures, conditions in which families can grow. That is why Negroes support labor unions' demand and fight laws which curb organized labor." I will entertain any question. Thank you. I will entertain any questions that any of you might have.
Thank you so much.
No questions? Thank you.
Cam Bartholomew.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the HUD's committee. My name is Kim Bartholomew, and I am president of Unite Here Local 74. We represent hotel workers, casino workers, and food service workers here in the city. We did approach Midas Hospitality regarding signing a card check neutrality agreement to make sure the future workers at this hotel were able to have a fair and neutral process if they desire union representation. Midas has said that they are a good employer, and if that's the case, there should be no reason for them not to sign a neutrality agreement, because then their workers would not want union representation if there are no issues. Local 74 cares deeply for the city of St. Louis, and we want to see this building refurbished, just not at the price of our hospitality workers in the city of St. Louis. This committee should not only think about the building, the residents, but also the workers in the city of St. Louis, and those workers should not be left behind. I, for one, am tired of hospitality and service workers being the forgotten workforce in the city of St. Louis. Without these essential workers, folks would not continue to visit our city. I believe the best thing for today would be for this bill to be held, but if the choice today is a yes or a no vote, then I'm asking you to vote no on Board Bill 129. I would also like to say that when you're talking about unions, it's not just about wages, it's not just about benefits. It's about respect, it's about dignity, it's about having a voice on your job every day. And I think that there's missing ingredients that people have there, that it's just not about the pay and just not about those benefits, where I think most people leave out the part that if you're only getting paid $15 to $16 an hour, you find it hard to purchase health insurance from companies. We have other hotels in this area that they get free health insurance, free dental insurance, and they're in a pension plan because they're in a union that they don't have to contribute any of their money to. So I would appreciate if we could look at all the facts, not only for our workers, but when you look at the building trades. I've talked to a lot of the building trades people, and that's our brother from IBW wanted to come here today because Midas isn't always the best group when it comes to utilizing union labor either, and I know we've heard that from them more than once. So again, I urge you to vote no on Board Bill 129. Thank you.
Debbie Meewider.
Are we? Can we not ask questions? I know there's a lot of folks here and a lot of testimony to go through today, so I appreciate everyone's patience as we kind of work our way through this process. Kim, thank you for being here today. Certainly, I've had a fair number of conversations over the last several weeks now. Can you just maybe elaborate more? How many representatives or members do you represent?
We represent 2,500 approximately in the city itself. We represent people at Busch Stadium. We represent people at Enterprise Center. We represent people at America Center. We represent the Marriott Hotel. We represent the Lumiere Casino and the hotel. We represent Embassy Suites, and we represent Marriott Courtyard. So there are union hotels in this city, and we are setting a standard. And again, I don't want this to be just about wages. I want people to understand that there's more to a union than just that.
And those are going to be some of my follow-up questions here. So
Please.
Can you talk more about the pension that the union offers and the other benefits that are provided through union representation?
Yes. So when you're talking about health insurance, we have a local plan that once that's negotiated into the contract, those employees pay nothing for it. The employer pays for that. We also have a dental plan that we negotiate free of charge to the employee. Our pension plan, most of the people on this side of the room are going to understand what I'm saying, that where people tend to go wrong is they look at a 401k and they look at a pension, and most 401ks, you have to put some of your own money in first in order to be matched. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we heard earlier that you have to be there a year before you can even participate in that plan. Our pension plan does not work that way. Our pension plan is money that the employer puts into your pension for you that you don't have to match at all, and it starts day one.
Do people have a vesting requirement in the pension plan? So if usually pension plans have some sort of vesting period, whether it's a year, 5 years, 10 years.
What the law is 5 years, and it's usually 5 years for 401k plans as well, for you to retain the company's money. If you participate in a 401k and you put your money in, you're going to get your money if you leave before the 5 years is up.
Great. And then with respect to hours and allowing employees to basically plan their lives, spend time with their families, et cetera, and hotels that you all participate and representing employees, what is a standard work week look like for those employees?
So typically, you have two different things when you're looking at a contract based off of insurance, right? That full-time status for insurance is 30 hours. Some of our contracts, we're starting to do that now, 30 hours, but most of our contracts are 32 hours are considered full-time, so they would be eligible for that health insurance and all the other benefits that come in that contract.
And are you familiar with what the turnover rate is for employees that are represented by
There's
these?
a lot of hotels that have a high turnover rate, but we have found in our union hotels, the turnover rate is not as high as non-union hotels because they have those protections. They have health and safety committees. They have management committees. They have leave. They have funeral leave. They have sick days. There's a lot of other things that haven't been mentioned that are in union contracts for people. Not to mention the most two important things to me is a grievance procedure. I don't know if everybody knows what a grievance procedure is, but that's a way for you to say, hey, employer, I don't think I'm being treated fairly, or hey, I got wrote up for something that I don't think is right. When you're an at-will employee right now, you don't have a right to do anything. Like if you go to your employer and say, hey, I don't think my write-up was fair, you're just pretty much scooted on out the door because you are an at-will employee. And that's my point today is if you're not in a union, you're an at-will employee, and you shouldn't have to jump from job to job to job. We should make the jobs that we have good, the service jobs good, because pretty soon the service industry is going to be the middle class in the United States of America.
And then can you just elaborate? I know many of us on the committee and the sponsor have received numerous, probably countless emails with respect to the conversations that have taken place between yourself, Midas, SLDC, et cetera. Can you maybe just elaborate where things are currently in terms of your requests?
So we have reached out. We reached out again after the last hearing to ask for a meeting to try to find a middle ground. At this point, just so y'all are aware, I offered, when we first did the card check neutrality agreement, was it 8 pages? Yup, because that's our model agreement that we give to every hotel, right? Whatever we're talking about this. I had emailed it, put it in a Word document and said, hey, let's make some changes and talk about this. And then there was no response for a long time until things started moving to be put on the agenda here. We met again, told them that if we could get to a point, I moved, and I feel that I have bent over backwards that we moved to the point to where, can we just put in a couple sentences, one paragraph to say, we agree to stay neutral. And so far, I've been told no, and they keep on saying at this late stage. I am still absolutely willing to sit down with them and come to some type of an agreement. Again, I don't want to see anybody in this city suffer. I want things to move. I want things to move forward. I just don't want it to be on the back of our workers.
And then and you and I have kind of had this conversation, I think as early as this morning, if my memory's serving me right. But one of the reasons that this is a unique situation is the folks that call that building home, that are the condo residents. So in the event that this doesn't happen, how would we, kind of manage their expectations going forward? I mean, and
I believe that if this doesn't pass today, that there are other groups out there. I can't believe that Midas Hospitality is the only group to pick from. I think that we can go out there and we can look for a management group and somebody willing to do that construction and that's willing to sign into card check neutrality agreement.
Do you have any specific I mean, is the card check neutrality agreement, is that kind of where things have landed at this point in time?
Well, at this point,
everyone's holding up signs to that extent. So,
well, where we are is we had moved off of the card check part of it the last meeting we had and just asked for neutrality for them to stay neutral if their workers choose union representation. So we don't have a repeat because this is being brought up in the press. So I'll call it out now, of Union Station Hotel. When those workers went through their union organizing drive and their union election, yep, you're right, they followed the law. We filed for an election. Guess what the company did? They hired consultants to get paid between $200,000 and $300,000 to live in the hotel with those workers 24 hours a day to convince them that they didn't need a union. This is what we're trying to avoid, because this isn't fair for anybody at all. This isn't fair for workers. It's not fair for the city. And honestly, companies are shoveling out $200,000 and $300,000. For what reason? And I'm not saying that Midas Hospitality is going to do that, but the track record has been that way. And we're talking about brown, black people, and single parents that work in our industry that we all do need to think about, because we do need to be our brothers and sisters' keepers.
I am curious, and I don't expect an answer today specifically, I guess, but it would be nice to know the turnover numbers between unionized hotels and non-unionized.
I can give you turnover numbers for union hotels, but I don't think a non-union hotel is going to tell me that information there, Shane.
Well, they're here too. I can ask them as well.
I can tell you that we've had people that's been at the Marriott for 15 to 20 years. Over 20.
Yeah. Okay.
They've been there 22 years right here. That they've been there that long because they have a great
No,
work.
but tenure isn't necessarily turnover. I mean, every company is going to have, folks that have been around for a long time. I'm sure Midas probably does as
I
well.
can certainly get some numbers prepared for you.
That would be wonderful.
For our places.
Yeah.
I can't tell you about the non-union places.
Understood entirely. Thank you. I don't know if
Absolutely.
there's other questions from the committee, but certainly appreciate your time and effort. And, I know that you're one of the reasons we have so many folks here today. So thank you for engaging with our community. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
I just have one follow-up question. You said that you started off with an 8-page neutrality agreement, and then you worked your way up to asking them. So what was the final thing that you passed
The
over?
last thing that we proposed was that we just agreed to neutrality without the card check, that they would agree to stay neutral and wouldn't interfere with their employees' rights. I sent over a document back to them that incorporated that, but then other protections for them as well. So stating if they agree to stay neutral, that we would agree not to picket or leaflet to help safeguard their position as well. And the meeting that we tentatively had scheduled was canceled.
So you've never got a response to the last offer that you
I got
made?
a response saying that they were a good employer and an email saying their pay. And
But they never directly said, they never responded to your direct ask of, okay, no neutrality card check. Can you just agree on paper that you won't punish workers for union? You did.
the last thing I heard was it would be silly to have a meeting and it wouldn't be productive.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, thank you, Kim,
Thank you, I appreciate it.
for getting up and speaking. I just want to make not to use it,
Oh, okay.
as a point of information for the crowd. I know that, thank you, I done got hot. As a point of information, because I know that I speak about this a lot in committees, and these hearings is where these conversations can happen transparently. They're being recorded. Just typically, we don't usually have the questioning of people that sign up to testify. Speakers are different. And I don't want anybody to look back and say, I didn't get my chance to speak the way someone else did. All of us here in this room are wanting to be fair, right? That's why we're here. So I want to make sure, again, for clarity, that now, since we have opened this door, any speakers that are coming up for the duration of this meeting for this bill, we will let you all ask questions. My colleagues ask questions for them as well. So with that, we'll go ahead with the list. Thank you.
Debbie Mewhiter in support.
Good morning. Debbie Mewhirter. I live in the Edison condominiums and am president of our residential association. Thank you for letting me speak again. I implore you to please move forward with this bill. We cannot wait. 71 homes with over 120 people are at risk. The people who live in this building pay taxes and we're willing to pay more, you heard last week. They vote and they care about St. Louis and its success. The 100-year-old building that houses our homes is seriously deteriorating. It needs attention now, not after it's fallen down. Also, we need help to fix it. Midas is willing to invest $50 million to do so. Please do not give Midas a reason to walk away. There is no plan B, trust me.
Carrie Evans, in support. Carrie.
Hello, everybody. Hi. My name is Carrie Evans. I'm also an Edison resident and a St. Louis City resident. I'm here today to talk about what is the Edison condos to St. Louis? Why is it important? The people who live there, we are doctors, we are nurses, we are firemen, we are white, we are black, we are Indians, and we are Asian. We invest in St. Louis. We buy tickets, season tickets to the Cardinal games, to St. Louis City Soccer, to the Blues. We volunteer at St. Louis Zoo. We volunteer at the Art Museum. We volunteer at the public clinics. We are invested in St. Louis. There are judges who live there. There are teachers. Now, we could be retired or we could be active. Professors at Washington University, professors at St. Louis University. We are generational. We bring our grandchildren down to the city parks to play in the fountains, Tower Grove Park. We go to the Symphony. We go to the Fox. We invest in St. Louis. We want to stay here. Please help us stay here. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I make a quick point of order on decorum? No, I just asked the chair if I could make a point of order about decorum real quick. Okay. So when you come before the committee, you're testifying to the committee. You're not testifying to the audience. So I would ask that when you're at the podium that you, one, speak clearly into the microphone, but also face the committee. And, please, if there are questions from the committee, please stay at the podium so that we can ask those. Thank you.
Dave Evans.
I spoke last week, and I thank you for your attention. I've just got a couple of things, and I'll be under my 3 minutes.
The microphone, sir.
It should be green when it's on.
Okay, thank you. If you are an Edison resident and were not here last week, please rise. Okay, the rest of the resident, please rise. Every resident, please rise. If you're in favor of this amendment, please sit down. Our building has been for sale for 4 years. The exterior is crumbling around us. It needs to be repaired. Our worst fears are we're going to become the next Eli Loft. And you all know what a horrible situation that is for the city of St. Louis. Please help us.
Reverend Teresa Danley, in opposition.
Hello, I'm a resident of Ward 6. I've lived in the city of St. Louis since I moved back here in 2004. As the parent of 3 children in SLPS, I love that this proposal would generate a lot of revenue for SLPS, as seen in the CLDC report. But as a member of the News Guild CWA 36047, and as a staff member of Missouri Jobs with Justice, I can't support this bill without a simple neutrality agreement I absolutely would love for this to move forward, but you have to respect the dignity and the rights of all workers. Charity offered by a corporation in time of crisis is not justice. And refusing to be neutral on the question of neutrality in a union election is the equivalent of stating an intention to interfere in the rights of workers in this city. While I would absolutely support this development, I cannot if it means that some of my neighbors' rights are disrespected in favor of others. I don't see any reason why there can't be an agreement to make this bill move forward, but not as it currently is. Thank you.
Jay Ozier in support. I'm sorry, in opposition.
Again, my name is James Ozier, and I'm a 70-year resident of the city of St. Louis and a 50-year homeowner in the city. I'm a 100% taxpayer, never shucked my duties. I've had 2 vehicles stolen in front of my house. As Lou spoke earlier, and I'm the president of the St. Louis chapter of CBTU. I presented to the Housing Committee a letter, and I would offer them again. Each should have received them before this meeting more than a couple of weeks ago, but I will renew it. I just basically want to state in opposition to this bill because it does not provide any rights for the workers to be able to organize without interference. Rights of workers is one of the last bastions of democracy in this country. The rights of workers to organize is very important. And if you don't respect that, then it's a form of slavery. In other words, during slavery time, we were told to work. And when the boss said, jump, our only response could be, is how high? We are not going for that today. And if I'm urging clearly to this committee to vote no on this bill until they are ready to sit down and negotiate in good faith. Do not interfere in workers' rights. It's like you going into I'm going to vote and you go into the ballot booth with me. You ain't got nothing to say about what I do, how they work, each worker. That's their decision, not yours. And I urge you again, vote no on Board Bill 129, support the rights of human beings and workers today. Make Dr. King mean something, not just a phrase. Thank you. And I will entertain any questions, and if you need copies of the letter that I sent to each and every member of this committee. Do anyone need one? Got it. You got it? Read it? All right, thanks.
Peggy Devereaux in support.
Hi, I'm Peggy Devereaux. I'm Vice President of the Edison Residential Board. I thank the committee for your time and attention to this bill. Our building is deteriorating as each day passes. In the past, we've had great commercial unit owners. We've had owners who have neglected necessary maintenance. We've also had good potential commercial unit owners walk away from purchasing those commercial units. We fear who may purchase the commercial unit. We fear for the future of our building. We need Midas to purchase the commercial units to save our building. We cannot do it on our own. The renovations will greatly increase the revenue to the city in so many ways, to include increased hotel occupancy, leading to increased hotel tax, additional commercial space leading to increased sales tax, increased property values leading to increased property tax, just to name a few. There will also be the benefit of the increased security in the area by having more foot traffic, and of course, the improved appearance of our beloved mural and the building structure. I find it really hard to believe how one issue that may or may not become an actual issue could prevent all this increased revenue and additional benefits to the city, and preventing the resolution of the very real maintenance and safety issues facing our building. The Edison community is depending on this bill passing. We either end up with another abandoned building or a vibrant revenue-generating machine. I hope the HUD's committee chooses the vibrant revenue-generating machine. Thank you.
Chris Rock, or Rack, in opposition.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Chris Rack. I am the Missouri Director for SEIU Local 1, speaking in opposition. And I gotta say, I don't envy the alderman today. You're being put in a tough spot. And I think it's kind of a false choice. Midas Hospitality seems to have put you in a position to decide between residents of a deteriorating building and workers who don't get to benefit the way that some of the residents described earlier, participating, going to St. Louis City matches and going to Busch Stadium and spending money at Stiefel Theater. Workers can't afford that. And hearing Midas Hospitality say that they were paying $11 an hour 3 years ago, or 11 and change, and now they're at 15 to 16, doesn't impress me that much, because who the hell can afford to pay the rent on $15 or $16 an hour? And so all that tells me is that you're a bad employer 3 years ago, and you still ain't doing enough. And so Midas has an easy fix to this situation.
I'm sorry, if I could have silence so we can hear his testimony, please. Thank you.
Midas has an easy fix to this situation. Be neutral, and then it's a win-win for everybody. So I just want to make sure that I would just say that I think people might be looking at the wrong quote-unquote villains in the room. This could be a good project, and it could be a win-win, and it should be if they would just agree to neutrality. Thank you.
Senator Carla May.
To the Madam Chair, the rest of the aldermen that's sitting here today, I am Senator Carla May, and I live in the 10th Ward. My alderman is the chair of the city of St. Louis. This is a complex situation, but let me just give a little background too. I am an over 25-year CWA 6300 union member. I also used to be a union steward, so I negotiated the rights of workers with the company and the union. We have to remember that during the mid-20th century, labor unions established the middle class. And we also have to remember that St. Louis City has more than 20% poverty in the city. The average rent in the city is like $800, $900 a month. That's average. Rent. Affordable housing is hard to come by for residents that live in the city of St. Louis. And so as I'm listening to the residents and I'm listening to the other side, the workers, this is an easy fix. This company needs to pay workers a livable wage in order for them to survive. They have to have health insurance. Even when workers are working on the job, they have families that they have to take care of. Some individuals have to work more than 2 to 3 jobs in the city just to provide for their families, and that's not fair. And there is no reason why asking you to be neutral. If you're such a good employee, what are you afraid of? Because if the employer is a good employer, they don't have to worry about workers organizing because it's evident that you're a good employee. So we have to talk about what it is we're going to do, or we're going to trade people for corporations or money. That's what we have to ask ourselves. And I encourage the residents, if it's 70 residents, you got all the doctors, lawyers, nurses, I encourage you to get together, purchase that building, and create your own revenue stream and develop the building. That's what I encourage, because we need to empower our residents, especially in the city of St. Louis, as a growing city. So I stand with workers today, and I'm asking you to stand with them as well, because right now it is difficult to live. The poverty rate in the city of St. Louis is high. We look at it on the state level all the time. And these workers need you to be the voice for them as well. And I understand the voice for all taxpayers, residents too. Neutral is easy. Neutrality is easy. That's saying that I'm not going to interfere or impede the progress of my workers trying to organize themselves if they see a need to organize. We need that freedom to organize, and I'm going to leave it there.
That concludes our speakers list.
All right, so do you want to see if Midas would like to speak, or whoever your other speakers are? Is any other comments? Be available for questioning.
Well, that was fun. Maybe I have a dentist appointment later. So I'm really here just to answer any questions. A couple of the questions that came up that I heard were the question about how many full-time employees we have at the Element Hotel. We actually have 23 full-time employees, 18 part-time employees. Most of those part-time employees are SLU students that work in the bar. They're not wanting to be full-time employees. They really are just they're working a shift or two a week to make extra money. But 23 full-time employees at the Element. There was a question about 401k earlier. We do provide a 401k, and we contribute dollar for dollar. And by federal law, it's a safe harbor, so that on day one they're fully vested, right? So if they literally, are put in $10 on day one, we put in $10. They now have $20. It's their money day one. That's the way a 401k works. There was some questions about turnover. The hospitality industry does have a high turnover rate as an industry. I don't know union versus non-union, but as an industry, it's about 100% is really what the turnover rate is as an industry. Okay, Midas, our turnover rate is less than half of that. It's under 50%. So it is significantly less than what the industry is. Again, guys, this is home for us. St. Louis is home. I'm sorry, I didn't. So we do own a construction company. We use primarily union labor all throughout the city. Even if it is not a union labor, it is prevailing wage, and they provide the apprentice programs that are certified. So we're not doing it to save money. We're still providing the prevailing wage, but primarily we use union on our jobs. I mean, that's really the way it is. I know the gentleman questioned our rate of pay. At our Element, it's a starting wage is about 16. Most of the staff makes between 16 and 18. I understand that they mentioned that was not a livable wage. It's actually more than union scale. So I don't know that we're out of line there. Again, this is home for me and my family and our company. We are trying to make a difference in St. Louis. We see this building as something that needs to be saved and can be a contributor to the community and to the city. and we were just trying to do the right thing. You know, I have no disrespect for the unions, none at all. I think from the hospitality side, though, there are 377 hotels in the greater St. Louis area. I believe there are 8 union hotels. So it is, for the most of our hospitality industry in St. Louis, the norm is non-union. And since this is the way we run our business, we treat people fairly, we treat them with respect. It isn't just about pay. I would agree with Kim on that. It's about a lot of other things, and that's the way we treat people. And so I've made a commitment to these folks that I'm going to try to save their building, you know, and that's what I'm going to try to do. And but I need your help. It's a very expensive project. Even with the abatement, our real estate taxes will go up day one. And with the condo owners, their real estate taxes have gone down dramatically over the last 5 years because of the quality of the building. That will probably go back up over the next several years. So at the end of the day, the real estate taxes are not abated significantly, and there's a lot of other taxes that go with this building that will benefit the city. Again, we can't do it without you guys, and we're going to do our best to make this thing happen. I did say a week ago that our closing was scheduled for tomorrow. We have, in fact, pushed that closing back. The seller, I talked to him yesterday, and he's allowed me to push that closing back till the end of January until we could hopefully get an approval from you folk, and then also get to through the full aldermanic board. But that's going to be probably my last extension. So I'm ready for any questions if you guys have any questions.
All right, thank you. Alderman Cone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here. Really do appreciate, at least from my perspective, you've been very communicative and responsive to requests from the committee and answers. So, you know, it's not common for a company CEO to be as responsive as you have been. There are some incongruencies, though, between what I'm hearing as a member of the committee from you and the company versus what the partners in labor have been expressing as well. So I am I've got a couple questions, and I appreciate you indulging me in these, but I am curious, and I don't expect you to be intimately familiar with this since you don't currently own the building, but from a just overall building perspective, how would you rate the condition of the building itself, structurally?
Yeah, it's in bad shape. I mean, it obviously leaks. There needs to be tuck pointing done throughout the whole building. The whole building leaks. The pool leaks. There's 4 elevators that are broke that don't work at all. There's a lot of deterioration.
And then there is reference to a pool that comes up, pretty
Yes, sir.
regularly. It's on the rooftop, or
It's on the it's on the top floor.
Top floor. It's not visible from Google Earth, which is why I'm asking.
Right.
Because I keep hearing that it's on the rooftop, and there's nothing on the rooftop except for elevator.
It's
shaft,
an
basically.
indoor pool, but it's on the top floor.
Okay, and that's currently closed because it's leaking, or
I don't think it's closed, but it's open, but it's a problem.
Okay. And then I'm curious, what is your objection to a neutrality agreement?
So the whole story is we were originally approached with a card check agreement, right? And really felt like that was unnecessary and inappropriate given what the ordinance had. And then it did keep dwindling down to a neutrality agreement. And when we were considering that, then we started talking about it and then asked some more questions. And it was clear that if we agreed to a neutrality agreement to get through today, that there would be more requests that would come next week before we went to the full aldermanic board, okay? And even last week, there was not a neutrality agreement that was presented. It was a full-bore card check agreement that was edited. Kim is correct. She's marked it up, and we could had the opportunity, and we did have the opportunity to edit the card check agreement, but that's just not. It's not necessary. To me, it's apples and oranges. We've never had a union activity or union environment until this past Sunday, and so it's never been an issue in the way we handle our employees or treat our employees.
So am I correct in understanding that you don't have a concern with a neutrality agreement itself, that you just have concerns about further asks that would come down the line?
Yeah.
You know,
I don't think it's necessary, because if there are plenty of federal, state, and local laws that protect the employees. If they choose to organize, they'll have those rights and they can organize. It's my responsibility to treat them fairly, and if I don't, they have every right to unionize. I have no opposition to that. I just don't think it's fair that I have to sign in a third-party agreement to my employees are not for sale. They're just not. They're my team. They're my people. They're my family, and we're not. I don't think I should have to sign an agreement that allows them to be organized if, in fact, there's nothing wrong.
well, the neutrality agreement wouldn't, quote unquote, allow them to be organized. It would allow them the opportunity to do so if they chose to do so, right? So, you're just saying that you won't, interfere in their ability to organize if they choose to do so.
We would not interfere with that. They have that right now. So I don't need to sign anything to give them the right to organize. They have that right today.
Okay, so I'm hearing you say that you agree with the premise of a neutrality agreement, but you're not wanting to sign a neutrality agreement.
I felt like that signing a neutrality agreement would not be the last thing that I would be requested to, right? I mean, that was pretty clear that there was going to be more to come in order to get through the next hurdle and the next hurdle. And to me, that was inappropriate.
Okay. I can't predict the future. I've not been part of, all of these conversations, but at least from what has been shared with me and what has been, shared today in public, is that, the neutrality agreement is, basically the last ask that has been made, throughout a negotiation process that has taken place.
That wasn't the last ask. The last ask was a card check agreement.
Okay.
So that's what was presented to us this past week.
Moving on, with respect to the construction of the hotel and the renovations of the building in general, you, I believe it was last week's hearing, mentioned that you have a strong relationship with building trades and that you've utilized them for projects in the past. Can you elaborate more on, what those relationships are, what parts of the project that you typically engage them in?
Yeah, so I mean, primarily plumbing, carpentry, masonry, all the major trades are union, they will be union on this job. And the electrical person is correct. We have used a what's the other union? Not the carpenters electrical union. We've used that electrical union, and we have also used a non-union electrician locally. That is true. Okay, but that doesn't mean they're not paying prevailing wages or have all do all the things that would be asked of us for this project. But 70%, 80% of the work that we do locally is union trades.
And on the trade side,
Mm-hmm.
specifically. Okay. And then just from the hotel operations perspective, the OYO, I believe, is the
OYO
that's there now.
OYO.
Oh, is it called OYO?
Yeah,
Okay.
on your own. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have actually stayed in one before, and it very much felt that way. So I'm not sure if that's what it actually stands for, but it was quite the experience for me in the middle of nowhere. So I presume, are they continuing operations there currently, or are they completely closed down?
No, they're still there. It's still an OYO hotel today. When we purchase it, it will cease to be an OYO hotel.
Okay, but for if it's in operations currently, do you know how many employees they currently have at the hotel?
It's under 10.
Oh, like entirely front of house, back of house, cleaning?
Yeah, total of, it's less than 10 employees.
Okay, for how many rooms in the hotel?
Well, there's only about 100 plus rooms open available that are in condition to rent. Most of the rooms are closed down.
Okay, and how many rooms would you have in your hotel?
With 220 at the end, we'll have 220 Sheraton rooms and 50 Bonvoy luxury apartments.
Okay.
So 270 doors.
So almost tripling what's currently there.
Yes, sir.
And then what is your projected staffing levels for the hotel?
So we fill that out. I mean, with food and beverage, we'll easily have 70 or 80 full-time associates there, plus part-timers.
Okay. So that's a pretty significant increase in terms of the number of employees that would be present in the hotel as well.
Yeah, I mean, it will cease to be a dead hotel and it will become a busy hotel.
Yeah. Getting into that, and we talked a little bit about this last week. So it was previously a Sheraton when it was first renovated
2001.
Yeah,
yep.
20 years ago. Hard to believe 2001 was that long ago at this point. I feel like I'm still bopping to the Cranberries in my car. But so with that initial branding of the Sheraton, are you familiar with any of the particulars of that? You know, what the licensing agreement was?
I mean, back then you have a 20-year license back then. They probably had a 20-year license at that time. My understanding is, I was not part of it, but my understanding is that during the course, they quit maintaining the hotel. Right, it started to deteriorate, and at some point, the brand says through inspections that you're not passing inspections anymore. You're now going to default. If you don't cure the default, you end up losing your franchise.
Right,
and that's what happened.
So, can I just be rather blunt with you? How do we ensure that that doesn't happen again? You know, we have 100 residents here that, you know, are very optimistic, you know, with the, I'll call it, you know, the goose that laid the golden egg, you know, Midas Hospitality. I'm not sure if that analogy's ever been made before, but, you know, they're pending, you know, their future, their livelihood, their hopes on you as the developer. This happened back in 2001, where the building, you know, was renovated. There was a hotel operator in place. They had a 20-year license with Sheraton. So it's a very similar story to what's being told here. You know, how is it that, you know, we can put in place, you know, any type of guarantees that this will not happen again, and this project comes before this committee again in another 10 years?
I mean, that's why we're trying to put together a project that will financially be stable for the next 30 years. That's part of why we're here, okay? And this is home for us. This is a very important project. This is in our hometown. We are not going to let it fail. I mean, it's just, but we want to make sure we set it up to be successful. And that's why the abatement was important, in order to make sure that we have a successful first 10 years so that it can continue to prosper.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all the questions that I have for now, Madam Chair. But thanks again for your time and consideration. Appreciate it.
Alderwoman Slicer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for your response to so many of my questions yesterday. I agree you've been very responsive to me when I've asked questions, and so has the team at Steadfast City. So I really appreciate that. You know, some of the questions that I asked, we still wanted to get through. You know, I agree the asks have sort of changed from the first letter, and the letter that was held up just in committee now was different than the ask that we're hearing is the kind of the main ask. So I do feel like coordinating the ask is a helpful thing for everyone to make sure that there's one ask that's being made or one consistent thing so that we know what is being expected. You know, we've talked about this a lot. If union busting is illegal, you have these kind of laws that exist already. So I don't understand why you won't agree to neutrality as a very simple to me ask. And I know you've answered that you don't feel like it's necessary, but no one's guaranteed a tax abatement. That is not it seems sometimes in St. Louis that people feel like they're guaranteed a tax abatement, but it's not. So I don't understand why, if you feel like your employees are going to not unionize, if you feel like your employees don't need this, I just can't wrap my head around it. And it's so important.
I understand. Excuse me. I understand. I mean, to me, it was a moving target, and it was very clear that that wasn't the only thing that was going to be asked of me. And so I felt like I was going down the rabbit hole, and if I signed this, then it was going to lead me right into something else that I was going to need to sign, and I wasn't going to do that. To me, I'm probably naive. Okay, I really felt like that doing this project, making these improvements in the city would be taken on its own merit. I had no idea that this whole thing would venture off into something that has nothing to do with this project and the investment that we're trying to make. I probably was naive. I did not think that those strings would be attached. But to me, it was beginning very clear that this wasn't going to be the only thing that was asked of me, okay? And so I wasn't going to go down that road.
I would push back a little bit on that because it does seem like the asks have become more and more simplified as opposed to the opposite direction.
It's going back and forth. I mean, the last ask was a full car check. So that was what was
I think
said.
the last ask is what was made in committee here today with neutrality.
Yeah.
So I feel like that is, I mean, to me, that's what I'm hearing.
David, jump in here if stay close and jump in if you'd like. So I'm Doug Rasmussen. I've been working on behalf of Midas. I'm the CEO of Steadfast City. We are I'm a 14th Ward resident, Mr. Aldridge. So he's my alderman. I've been in Old North for 20 years. I've got my family's there too. And this is my third number. We went from 5 to 3 to 14. So anyway, on Alderwoman, to your question, I've been working on behalf of our client, and then also working with Kim and her team and others to try to kind of sort through the issues that we're all hearing about and everybody's here to talk about. I think a week ago we met over at SEIU, and we had some conversations, and I think kind of left that meeting with something David and his team, his legal team, something to consider, right? Which was basically try to come up with 2 sentences or so on neutrality. Kim did share with me that she would be asking for additional paragraphs after that, but we were trying to come up with the 2 sentences. We, as David has stated, he's obviously a proud, employer, business owner, entrepreneur, has done a tremendous amount of work here in St. Louis. This is his hometown. So we didn't quite get there on that. And then this past Wednesday, I think Kim and sort of a olive branch of sorts, set out the bigger agreement, right? But that agreement had five stanzas in it, not 2 sentences or anything like that. And I think we were going to hopefully meet Monday. She and I chatted on Sunday. So again, to her credit, she reached out on Sunday, and I just felt like, given that it was 5 paragraphs or 2 sentences, we weren't quite there. And given what you've heard from David and kind of his thoughts around this, that and all the benefits of the project too, right? With this is going to be a heavily utilized project for construction labor. It does create 80 full-time equivalents at 59,000 a year. In terms of jobs, we've heard from all the residents and all their problems with crime, clandestine, activity. We've heard about the fire code issue that was brought up last week, which that needs to be addressed, and that's a major public safety issue. That I think certainly gave me pause when I learned about it last week. I hadn't really heard that before. So I think, and then not to mention the other support letters, and all those folks aren't here, and I appreciate the organized labor and the labor movement for being here. But we do have, in addition to the owners here, we've got several downtown related interests, which you've all received those letters, so we don't need to go through each group that did that. But I think the approach here was just to try to get through today and then kind of see if we've got a project here or not. I mean, unfortunately, without the tax abatement, I think we'd all like to do projects without tax abatement. Our firm does a lot of real estate work, not only in St. Louis, but around the country. And, St. Louis is an area that has got a lot of great opportunities, right? I think I'm very optimistic about the city. I feel like downtown could really be a great engine for this region. This is a major project right by, the stadium and City Hall and all these things. It's something we're trying to improve, right? But the economics, unfortunately, are, the cost of redevelopment are high. Financing is very tight. Lenders are somewhat risk adverse. There's a lot of equity that's required. There's a low amount of a senior loan is, about 60% at best for a hotel in downtown. So, without the economic development support, unfortunately, there's nobody here wins, right? There's no construction labor. David doesn't get his project. If Kim and her Unite Here eventually come in and convince the workforce, David has said he wouldn't stand in their way, if you will. He's going to follow the laws. If for some reason, that they end up organizing, the hotel, these jobs don't even exist, right? If this project doesn't move forward. Alderman Cohn, you had some questions last week about the residential tax analysis. And I know we sent you all a big, long spreadsheet too, so I can give you that.
I just want to interrupt you for a second. I'm asking questions right now.
My bad.
And I appreciate it. Please don't interrupt me.
I got skipped on the list. I apologize.
Thank you. Please do not. I'll smile, but I'll ask you not to interrupt me.
I apologize.
You're saying that they are going to follow neutrality, but no one will sign that. And I hear what you're saying, that the agreement's changed. I'm hearing what the agreement is being asked for today. I'm a union kid, union family. If my parents saw me cross a picket line, which it sort of feels like I'd be doing today, voting for this without you being able to say it, you're saying follow all these fire code laws, all these other laws. I don't get it. I continue not to get it. And that's where I'm at.
Understood. Yeah. I'll let David jump in. I apologize I didn't mean to. I got off track.
That's okay. I mean, this is a project that, I've said this to Alderman Aldridge, we want to support it. It seems like the unions have given a lot in terms of what they originally asked for. And it is, on our end, frustrating to get a letter that asks for specific things and then it changes. And I'm sure it's been, like I said, frustrating on your end.
Sure.
It seems like the ask right now is to follow a law and to state that you'll do that in a way that makes the unions comfortable that that is what's going to happen. I'd asked Mr. Robert in an email as well if any union busting has occurred. That was going to be my next question. If you want to answer that, how comfortable should we feel with you?
David. Yep.
If you make a promise to do that, will you do it? You're saying to us right now that you plan to be neutral. I'd like you to say it to them. and they're asking for a very specific way for
Yeah,
that
so,
to happen.
I mean, you'd asked if we would try to, I can't remember your last question. The question you sent me an email on was, would we be neutral if the organization happened, right? Was that your last question? I think it was.
I'd asked about that, and then if you'd had any history. I mean, you don't always see this sort of reaction to a project.
So we have no history of ever. I have no history, right? So with the union, so that's never come up in the 20 years that I've been doing this in St. Louis. So it's never come up. I am not going to stand in the way of what my associates want. Okay, that if I'm not doing my job, if the Janessas of the world are not doing their job, then they have every right to unionize. We're not going to stand in that way, and they have that right now through federal, state, and local laws. Okay, my beef really was. It was a moving target, okay? I mean, it was a moving target, and I think it's unfair to all of a sudden in an open hearing like this to say, oh no, now we just want a neutrality agreement, and if you agree with that, we get the subsidy. I'm not. That's not fair to have a gun at my head, right? To do that. I have a lot of respect for these gentlemen who've been in the union 60 and 70 years. I have a lot of respect for folks, but I don't think it's fair today to be forced, again, it's been a moving target, okay? But to answer your question, I've never stood in the way of a union organization trying to organize. That's never happened in my career, so.
Thank you for answering that question. Is it possible to ask Ms. Bartholomew with Unite here to come back up? Are you able to come back up? Thank you, Mr. Robert.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for being here today, and thank you for all the work you're doing. Is it a moving target, or is the target set? I mean, where we need,
So
to
the
know
moving
this.
target that he's referring to is called negotiations. We gave an 8-page document. They said no, so we moved off of some things. The last thing I did send was saying, hey, I think these things are important to have in here, as I mentioned earlier. Whenever we're talking about neutrality, we wanted to also put things in there to help the company, stating that we wouldn't picket, that we wouldn't leaflet, so things to help safeguard them as well. So when they said I sent it back marked up with 4 paragraphs and a signature, and the keystone of that being that we agree to stay neutral. We took out the card check part of it, and that's all we're asking for here today. So the moving target is called negotiations. And at this point, I'm negotiating against myself.
I understand, and that's to my, the point I was making is that it seems like it has changed. So it seems to have changed
Changed on my end.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Rack with SEIU really spoke well about it does seem to come down to us making the decision. Of course it does.
Mhm.
But it's something that it seems like a reasonable request.
Yes, ma'am. I agree.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Alderman Browning.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody who's come and testified today. I really appreciate hearing from everybody who stands to be affected by this project. Do want to push back on one thing I heard in the last testimony, the idea that the federal, state, and local laws protect workers who are trying to unionize. I have seen the gross things that Starbucks is doing to stop people from unionizing. I've seen how Amazon treats its workers, and we see that across the country and even in this state, even in my ward. So I don't agree that the local and federal and state laws protect workers as they should. From the testimony today, though, it does sound like Midas treats many of its workers well. I do acknowledge that. Even if that's the case for all of your workers, then you should not fear unionizing. Neutrality is not too much to ask. This is a really beautiful building. It's honestly one of my favorites. I want to see this hotel renovated. I want to see it brought back to a place where it's not detrimental to the residents of the building and the city as a whole. I also think that the residents here want to see workers treated fairly. And I want to make sure that is the case as well. So this is coming down to one thing. Whether they're part of the construction crew, whether they're part of the hotel staff, every worker should have the right to organize, the right to unionize, and the guarantee that if we, the city, are incentivizing this with public dollars, then they deserve that guarantee that you, Midas Hospitality, agreed to sign a neutrality agreement. Let the workers decide. It's that simple. So two things can be true, that this project needs to happen and that workers deserve the right to unionize without interference. I don't want to vote on this today. I want to allow Midas Hospitality the chance to do right by the condo owners, do right by the workers of our city, and agree to neutrality so that this project can happen.
Thank you, Alderman Browning. Vice Chair Sanye.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just first want to thank everyone for being here today. I think this is just such an interesting situation. But one of the things that I do want to say to the residents in the building is I think it's kind of been expressed by now that all of us, including your aldermen, are very pro-labor and very pro-union and have kind of given comments to say that we would like to see whatever will best represent that the developers and Midas Hospitality Group is not going to punish the workers. I wish that if you all really, if you value your workers, you value your residents, and you hear a clear ask of agreeing not to punish workers, that you would have said yes. I think in this situation, that's what it would have looked like to really advocate for both your residents and the unions. Nobody's yet talking about the pay that you would have to do, the benefits that you are having to give. We are asking for the most basic line of can you just agree to not punish workers and not retaliate against them should they decide to unionize? I think the comments about, moving the goalpost, facts are facts. If we have a piece of legislation and it started off as 8 pages and the most recent document was about 4 sentences, the moving the goalpost didn't expand, it got simpler. And I think, again, and I also keep hearing you reference the unions, but the alderman is, Alderman Aldridge is the one carrying this. And I know that he would like to see, to honestly probably not to be in this position. And he would not be in this position had you all, again, whether it was signing 4 sentences, whether it was having your own lawyers and your own team drop a document that you were comfortable with. Even the fact that the unions are saying that you did not go to the table with them until the abatement was on the table, that's not a show of good faith and good effort. I did send some questions. Alderwoman Schweitzer sent an email where she asked some questions, and you all responded to that email, but I found your answers, again, very vague. You're talking about moving the goalposts, but I feel like you're not defining the goalposts. I feel like every time a question is asked, the answer is very broad and very vague and oh, well, we would never do this. And we don't legislate based off of people's feelings or people's claims. We're supposed to legislate based off of your practices and facts and evidence that you can present. So I want to ask some questions. You guys kind of already responded to the initial email sent in hopes to get some clarity. And I want to ask, please be as specific as you can. Please be as, on point, numbers, data. I need specifics for this because the subsidy is specific. It has a specific amount with it. And I really did not, the comment about, it's not necessary. We don't just do what's necessary for our workers. We go above and beyond for them. We don't just hit the goal mark. Like Alderwoman Schweitzer said, subsidies are not necessary. They're not mandatory. Technically, if this is something that's under your management, it's your responsibility to manage it. When you do come to the city and you ask us for subsidy, when you want public dollars, you're going to hear public expectations that are then going to go beyond the people in the building because now you're hitting everybody's revenue and everybody's tax dollars. So I just wanted to be clear because I know you mentioned in the email that some of the hotels were in receivership. So just for the sake of my line of questions, can you clarify for me of the 4 hotels that you have in the city, which ones are under receivership?
So the Hotel Indigo is under receivership and the Le Méridien.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I know you mentioned that you, just another general question, you may not have this information. How many properties are in your portfolio outside of St. Louis?
Outside of St. Louis, 33-ish, 33.
Thank you. Okay. And I know in the email you did respond, we asked about lunch and the breaks provided, and you said, provide employees with breakfast. I think that's excellent. However, keeping in mind that hotel workers and those type of staff are covering 24/7 rotations, do you provide a free lunch or a free dinner or a paid break for a meal on each shift?
They have a paid break, but we don't have a restaurant on site, so there's no kitchen. So there is no lunch or dinner provided, but they do get a paid break, yes.
Thank you. You also stated that you have a good insurance participation, very vague. Can you give me more details? And specifically, when I'm asking about participation, I'm asking about the workers that would be eligible for right here union. So I'm not talking about supervisors. I'm not talking about managers. I'm talking about like housekeepers and folks in that role. How many of those folks are enrolled in your health insurance at your city locations?
So two of the hotels are not our employees. Okay, so those are separate. The other two is about 45% are signed up for insurance of the line level associates.
Thank you. And for benefits of your company, again, because the conversation is about, you were like, oh, it's not necessary. The union stated that they would provide covered health insurance. Is your health insurance covered?
It's co-paid.
All right. And then you also said that they have a good participation on the 401k plan. I have the same question that I just asked you about health insurance for the 401k. Do you know how many or what percentage of those that qualify?
It's above 50%. I think what we've learned is it's about educating people on what the 401k is. It's a constant thing that we have to educate them on why they can put money in there pre-tax and basically not lower their paycheck, but be able to put money in pre-tax, have us match it so that their paycheck, their stay-home paycheck is basically the same, but they're putting away savings also. It's education.
And can you describe your current grievance policies for workers? Do you have a company? Do you have a general policy? Is it set by each hotel?
We employee handbook at every hotel, all right, every business. They obviously have, it's an open door policy. They have the right to not only communicate to their supervisor if they have an issue, but then there's a program where they can go up to the next level supervisor if they have a grievance.
And it's clear written in policy that they're not allowed to be punished for expressing their grievances by their?
I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I gotta believe that's in there, okay? I mean, we would.
Well, if we go with gotta believe, we'll go just, you don't know. We'll just say you don't know if you're not sure.
I'm 99% sure that's what it says, all right?
And is there someone, so there's employees, there's supervisors, do you have anyone within your company structure whose job it is to advocate for employees?
Yeah, there's 6 HR professionals that are in St. Louis that advocate for the associates.
Okay, and then I know you also mentioned in the email, and even today you've touched on your starting wages. Something that I want to point out is, $16 an hour comes out to about $31,000 a year. And a one-bedroom apartment in the city of St. Louis can be about $900. $31,000 broken up into 26 is about a little bit under $1,200. I just think like these types of contexts are very important because the importance of unions is they don't, not only do you pay someone a certain wage, you make sure that as the cost of living rises, you're advocating for those staff and those employees to get that rise as well. I'm not trying to tell you, what your wages should be, but just it would be difficult for someone, certainly especially with a family, to afford to live and get groceries and all the things that we all have to do with what you stated. And do you guys have a set policy that employees receive an annual wage increase?
They do.
Thank you. And then you also previously stated that Midas offers competitive vacation benefits, and you make sure that your associates have time to take off during the year, and that you feel it's very important for everyone to get a break. I really appreciate the information, but it's very vague. Again, what is your current break time, PTO, vacation, sick time policy?
So six days of PTO the first year, and then it goes up a week every.
Okay.
Goes up a week every year.
And okay, excellent. And then you also mentioned the $31,000 in line level bonuses, and that you offer a transportation allowance to all employees to help cover bus or whatever their means to work. That's excellent. I know that's something that the unions do advocate for, but I was just curious, that $31,000 to line level bonuses and employees, is that something that like housekeepers receive? What departments received those bonuses?
Would have been the line level workers. That doesn't include any managers. So that's housekeepers, front desk clerks, maintenance guys, food and beverage workers.
Thank you. And is it just a general annual bonus, or was it for a specific?
Quarterly.
Okay. And do you, you stated, I know you mentioned earlier, what is your number? How many hours constitute for full-time status?
What's that? I'm sorry.
How many hours constitute for full-time status?
30 hours a week is full-time.
And then I'm going to repeat it again because what you've been asked before. I know you didn't want to sign the paper. I know you were saying that you felt like the goalposts, might be moved. You are under oath. Are you able to say 100% that you will not punish workers if they attempt to unionize? Can you say that right now?
Absolutely. I would never do that.
All right. All right. Well, thank you. I think that, I guess the only other thing that was mentioned too by some of the other folks in the room is, do you use, when you do constructions and projects, things like that, do you use contractors that are affiliated with the Department of Labor?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. That completes my questions.
Right, Alderman Cone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have any further questions at this point in time. Well, actually, I do. Is SLDC in the room? Mr. Wilson, thank you. I'm going to ask these questions just because I think it's important, and it's somewhat of a follow-up from the conversation that we were having last week with respect to the history of incentives on the project. Last week, what I learned through residents of the building is that there were tax abatements that were previously provided for the project, but it was on the condo side of the project and not the hotel. However, it's been brought to my attention just moments ago that there was also previously a TIF
Correct.
on the hotel.
Just the hotel. Correct.
Right. So in fact, the entire building did receive an incentive
Yes.
when it was redeveloped because the TIF was passed in 1999. The tax abatements were probably from around 2001 when residents started moving into the building. When did the TIF go into effect?
It went in, I would say, a few years. It retired recently, about 3 or 4 years ago. So it paid off early. So the TIF is retired.
So was it a 30-year TIF, a 25-year TIF?
The maximum for a TIF is 23 years.
23-year TIF. So it retired 2 years early, maybe.
Something like that.
So, well, otherwise it would be expiring next year.
Correct.
Right. So for those of you that aren't familiar with me, I've been an alderperson for 15 years. I have been very vocal during my time down here about incentive reform. I championed several bills over the course of my tenure to reform the way the city has been incentivizing projects throughout the city. But specifically within our central corridor, where a lot of these projects don't always pass a but-for test, it has been very problematic for me as someone who represents a community that has continually seen disinvestment, both private and public, over the years, to watch projects in the central corridor, whether that's downtown, midtown, central west end, et cetera, receive just incredible tax incentives. And certainly in the 90s, when that TIF was, initially passed, that made sense, right?
Yes.
But here we are getting to a point again in our city's history where projects are coming back to the table asking for more money, after these incentives have expired or, would have possibly been expired. So it's very frustrating for me, as I'm sure you're aware,
Fully
and
aware, yes.
not to put you too much on the spot because you are one of my constituents, which I'm very proud of. Thank you for calling the Third Ward home. But I'm curious how that factors into SLDC's evaluation of projects. So, because I'm not sure that is something that is in our current evaluation criteria if the project had been previously awarded incentives. But can you just elaborate on that further?
No, on all projects over $1 million, the Board of Aldermen gets a packet with the board bill now. Due to past legislation, we could add that material into the board packet and for future packets. We have drilled down in the developers' past history and their past experiences. We've kind of put a light on that more so. I totally understand with your concerns with a building getting incentives again. The problem is we are facing a market that has changed quite a bit with COVID, and banks are not lending to certain projects now. So it's harder to close that gap. So this project, in a pure sense, if we had a strong market, we probably wouldn't want to incentivize again. But the market is totally different now. So and the developer's different. So we were not incentivizing the developer who failed last time.
So I would go out on a limb to say that probably a good 70% of parcels downtown have had some level of incentive provided to them in the last 40 years.
That could be a good guess, yes.
Are you telling me that because of market conditions that any of those projects that might need restoration, because tuck pointing only lasts so long, windows only last so long, roofs only last so long. So are we basically just going to end up publicly subsidizing every renovation of a building downtown for perpetuity?
No, I would not say that. I would say if the market proves, we should cut back on incentives. But we're seeing across the country, San Francisco, even the strong growth areas, that the market is tightening with commercial markets declining. So even those areas are looking at incentives to increase. And it's not something we want to do in the future, but it's something we want to tail off when the markets get stronger.
I'm sure you understand how I might be very frustrated and possibly angered by that possibility.
I agree.
This is a very unique situation. I've, as I mentioned, have been down here for, the better part of 15 years. I can't recall another situation where we've had a hotel coupled with condominiums that has come before the Board of Aldermen, at least during my tenure.
Correct.
Are you aware of any similar projects?
I've been with SLDC for 9 years almost, and condos are very rare in St. Louis. We just don't have a market of that. So this is a rare project.
I am not going to belabor some of the remarks, from my colleagues here, but I do want to be very candid with folks. I am very much on the fence with respect to this board bill. I have leaned in favor of voting for it for only one reason, and that reason is you all. That is literally the only reason I would vote in favor of this board bill, is because of the 100 roughly people who call that building home and are watching it deteriorate around them. My heart goes out to each and every one of you. That is a really awful situation to be put in, and it's something that's outside of your control largely. So I don't want you to think that your pleas have gone on deaf ears. It is, it's something that I take to heart. So I really do want you all to know that literally, if I were to cast a yes vote, you would be the only reason why I would do so. I'll go through my list here, a very short list. Incentive reform. This is a project that's now coming back to the well for incentives in the city. Not 20 years after it was completed in its renovation. That's something that's a hard pill for me to swallow when I've got a 300,000 square foot old school building sitting in the middle of my neighborhood that has been vacant for that entire duration. And has struggled to get any type of development going. And I've got 18,000 neighbors around that building that see it every single day. Their kids have to grow up next to it every single day. It catches fire probably 5 times a year, imperiling the lives of our first responders. And it's a struggle to try and get resources for that. As soon as I took office as 3rd Ward alderperson, it was announced that South City Hospital was closing, another 300,000 square foot building sitting on South Jefferson, South Broadway. South Jefferson is in the 7th Ward, which was another campus that had closed several years ago at this point. But it is a challenge for those of us who represent communities in North St. Louis and Southeast City to attract developers, such as Midas or others, to the table, even with incentives. And so that has been part of my push for reform over the years that I've been down here, because these programs have been designed for communities where disinvestment has continually taken place, and that is not where historically they've been placed within our city. If you look at the history of incentives in the city of St. Louis, it's almost entirely exclusive to the Central Corridor and near South Side neighborhoods, such as Lafayette Square, Shaw, The Hill, etc. Southeast City has seen very little. I think in 15 years, I've passed fewer than 10 tax abatements. I would probably venture to say it's fewer than 5, but I'll go with 10 to be on the safe side. Bills. There have been some scattered site plans recently that my colleague from the 7th Ward and I have sponsored for low-income housing projects, but I'm just trying to provide some perspective for the residents why this is a really difficult decision for me. There are several options. This is a legislative process. Just because something happens today doesn't mean that it's the end all be all. I would venture to say, and I would ask that the sponsor of the bill, hold this for now. At our last hearing last week, you mentioned that you are scheduled for closing tomorrow. As of today, at least, you've testified that the closing has been pushed off until end of January. I do think that that provides some more time for these discussions. I would personally get involved in them if necessary, and would welcome the opportunity to do so if that's necessary as well. But I do think that there are some very reasonable questions and very reasonable requests that are before us today that would not hinder the progress of this project. I think that there's plenty of time to discuss those options and hopefully come to some sort of mutual understanding, respect, and agreement on those projects or on those requests. And for me, if I were to vote yes on this, I would absolutely be a no on the floor of the Board of Aldermen if there are not those conversations taking place before the hearing at the full Board of Aldermen. I want to be very clear about that. But as it stands, I've got the issue with incentive reform. I've got the issue with, kind of fair labor practices. I've got the issue with just general financing of this project. And I think there's a lot of outstanding questions on behalf of my colleagues as well. At least based off of my conversations and knowledge, I don't think that this has the votes to pass out of committee today. I would be surprised, and that's if I'm a yes. I don't think it still has the votes to pass out of committee. But I think in the event that there is a vote held, just so that we're all clear, and it does fail in committee today, someone who voted on what we call the prevailing side, so someone who voted no, would be able to bring the matter back forward before the committee in the future. So I don't want anyone to think that there's an end-all be-all, that this is the end of the road, because I do think that no matter what happens, whether it passes out or if it fails, if it passes out, then I think largely there's the expectation that those conversations will continue before it hits the full board and that we have some sort of mutual agreement and understanding. But if it fails, then those conversations still can continue, and then it can come back before this committee with someone who voted on the prevailing side bringing it back before the committee. So I just want to throw those out there. I know we've got a lot of new people on the Board of Alderpersons as well. So as a senior representative, I feel like sometimes it's my obligation to educate some folks too in terms of our processes down here. But more importantly, I think it's important for you as residents, constituents, citizens, taxpayers of our city to also understand that any outcome from today's meeting isn't necessarily the last step in this process unless certain parties decide for it to be so, which would not be this Board of Alderpersons, because I think all of us would like to see this project happen. It's just a matter of how we get to that endpoint. So otherwise, I want to thank everyone for being here today. It's always great to hear from our residents and our citizens. And I give it back to you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Cone. Anyone else have any additional comments?
I don't have a comment. I have a question. Do you all know what your profits were for last year before? I'm just generally curious about that.
So I don't off the top of my head, but each hotel is its own profit center, right? So some of them make a certain, I don't know, to answer your question. I don't know what the total roll-up is. So, but each hotel has its own P&L, so it would have its own profit or loss.
And if I missed part of what earlier when you were saying that you were able to get an extension until the end of January, was that contingent upon something? Like if we held this in, well, I guess my first question is, yes, if we held this and did not vote it through today, we will have probably another hearing for HUD's January 9th. That's the Tuesday that we return. Is it possible that you can, I think the desire is very clear. Is it possible that it could be held and come back, and you can come back January 9th?
Yeah, I mean, this whole process is kind of, the project that is at risk already today because of this. I mean, it makes investors nervous, and so I don't, if the extension was intended to get through hopefully an approval today and through the aldermanic approval, right? That was why the extension was granted by the seller. I don't know that I'm going to get a longer extension, if that's your question.
Well, not a longer extension. You said you had until the end of January to come back to kind of get everything through. So today I don't know that I could vote for this. And so if you're saying it would hurt you to wait, I'm sure it would hurt you to get a no and for it to not pass through committee. So would it be a better idea then for you to have some conversations? Again, I'm not trying to get in the middle. Just do something concretely on paper or something that says that and come back January 9th after you've had time to have more conversations.
Yeah, I don't, just being honest, I mean, I don't know what's going to change for me because there's I don't think what I'm being asked is what ultimately I'm going to be asked to do. And so,
Well, I'm not asking you about that. I asked you about a specific set of circumstances. So I'm not asking you about if anything else is given. When you come back, if something else is given on January 9th, you can say, we were also asked this and this was given as I was nervous about. I'm asking if you can have conversations about agreeing to the part of the conversation about neutrality for workers. If you can do that and come back January 9th. I'm not talking about hypothetical situations.
so you're asking me if we would have conversations about neutrality and you would stay the vote today and we would come back January 9th?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Alderman Aldridge just texted me. I admit I'm wore out, okay? Just being honest. If the project gets killed today, it gets killed, I mean, it's unfortunate because that's the last thing I wanted to have happen. But I don't, again, I understand your opinion. I have respect for that.
So you're saying where you're at now is where you're going to be. It doesn't matter if we wait. We might as well take our vote now because there's no chance that that you all can figure out something around putting something concretely on paper saying that you're not going to punish workers for waiting.
Already had those conversations. I don't know what's going to change, right? Because I think the ask is going to keep.
You've had the conversations, but you've not done anything on paper to agree to not punishing workers for unionizing. You can put that on paper. Again, you keep mentioning if you get additional asks. You can send us emails. We've had communication along the way. If you get additional asks, and I'm saying this right now in front of all of them, that I'm not going to bear anything further for additional asks. What I am willing to say is something to make sure that workers are protected if they unionize. Is that something that you could figure out between
If you
now?
want to stay it, one thing I would, if you want to stay it, that's fine. We can have that conversation and see if we can come up with something.
Thank you.
All right. Well, those were some of the same questions that I was going to ask about some of the phrases that have been thrown around today, but for a test, good faith conversation. I think there's a very respectable way that we can come together to move projects like this in the city forward for the greater good and not just for one side. But I think that sometimes what happens is conversations get diluted and taken in different directions in disrespectful ways, and it becomes a or this or that versus the and conversation, which is the only way that we are going to move together as a city, which is the only way that we will move projects like this forward. So people ask questions and they say you're under oath and put pressures on people that they might not have been prepared for. We just heard, as I can see in a lot of people's faces in this room, that people are worn out. And I think references to time are disrespectful by some because none of us have lived in that building the way these residents and constituents have lived in that building, and none of us have worked in the positions that the workers that are sitting here asking us for their support as well have done. I don't want this bill to die in this committee, and I don't want to do anything intentionally on my heart. Now, people can govern and legislate the way they want to, but me as a person, my word and what I have to look at myself in the mirror and do, I would never want to do anything intentionally to have something die in the committee. From a speed hump to this, from a stop sign to this, I would never do anything intentionally. You can't threaten me with a vote or a not vote. I don't operate down here looking at the next election. I operate under good faith that I know has been thrown around, but I believe in it so that we can move forward as a city. So what I'm asking and offering, because I know some comments have been made and I don't want to confuse people about bringing stuff back and taking stuff forward when we can make a decision today. I want to ask the sponsor, who is the only alder who can make the decision, if he can come back up and be recognized on this bill, and we can have the conversation on what you want to do in your leadership to move this bill forward, knowing that, and this is part of the legislative process, we asked if what a difference, it might be corny, but what a difference a day makes. This is way longer than a day for these people. This is way longer than a day. And this isn't a good look for the city, right? To have this kind of hold up if we're trying to move our city forward. There was an ask to move it to our next hearing, which is on January the 9th. But if I understand that's a no, then that's a no. I'll understand that. But I have to hear it from you all. I have to hear it from you all again in the good faith conversation that everybody's throwing around, that we can get to a point where we'll be able to move this forward. And we are generally going to try in a respectful way to move this forward and honor the things that were said today. Or even if we think these conversations can be had sooner, Alderman, we have time to call another hearing before this week ends. That's a 24-hour process. So when I say what a difference a day make, it really could be a day. And we can have the conversations that need to be had, and we can move this forward, and we could second read it on Friday before we leave. There's 4 readings to a bill. So again, what Alderman Cone said was true. Whether we do it today or not, it sounds like it's not a lot of time, but it does make a difference in time on when he can have this done by the end of January, if that is when he said the next date is for him to move it forward with his funding. Okay, thank you. So with that, I'm gonna now lean on your leadership, Alderman. And if you need to break or if you need to have another conversation, whatever we need to do, but we need to get this moved, right, in the good faith effort that everybody's talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to my committee members for asking, I would say, the necessary questions to try to figure out how we get to a solution. Like last time, I will be remiss before I say anything, because this whole situation has put me in as Alderwoman from the 7th said, a very interesting spot, or the Alderman for the 3rd. These people these residents that stay in this condo building, like the Alderman from the 3rd, my heart has been going out for you all since I've laid eyes on what's going on. Not what I've heard through the emails, but actually seen the state of where this hotel is. I commend you all for continuing to step up, show up, and wanting to see something different in a place that you actually live in. I know part of the conversation is talking about the future of workers, which I 100% support. But before we get to the future, we're talking about the present right now. You guys are living in a building that is just dreadfully horrible. So yeah, voices are being heard. I know plenty of committee members have said due to your voices and showing up is one big reason why they want to vote for this. And for that, I thank you all for showing up and continuing to show up. And on the other side, I feel like I'm in the middle, literally in the middle. I have my union family. Yeah, I know y'all family. We've been on a lot of those picket lines. And I understand the conversation about how do we protect workers, why it's so important. Like Ms. Kim said, she's not against the people in the condo. She just wants to ensure that we can get to a spot where workers are also being protected. Then I find myself in the middle of what side to choose. Do we take a vote knowing that it may die today, and I don't think nobody want to see this project die. I don't. I know no person on the committee wants to either. Or do we hold off on it? And ultimately, what I was going to ask is that we did take a vote knowing that what happens today doesn't necessarily mean, like the alderman from the 3rd said, if it comes out on the floor that it get voted on. I want to figure out a solution for this project. This is probably the hardest piece of legislation out of all the other ones. The jail bill, the DFOB, the police oversight was a lot easier than this because we're talking about people's livelihood, which a lot of these pieces of legislation are. I will ask respectfully that we do hold the bill today on the hopes that Midas and the union can continue to have good conversations. I feel like a lot of the conversations has been workers versus residents, and the reality is it's about making sure everybody's going to be treated humane, from workers and the people that live in the building. It's turned me off a little bit, just all the finger pointing that I've heard today, or saying who's the true villain. Nobody's a villain. I think the union wants to make sure workers are protected, and the people that stay in this building have the right to live in dignity without worrying about their safety. And all this finger pointing or trying to, it's been frustrating to see the back and forth. When I know I've been in the middle of these conversations between Midas and the hotel to try to find a solution, and I feel very positive. We're a lot better than the first meeting. Negotiations don't happen overnight. I know the hotel owner said that he is willing not to retaliate against workers, but I also know the importance of what that looks like on a piece of paper, and just having that for future so that workers aren't going to be pushed away if they want to unionize. I would just, yes, Madam Chair, I feel like I'm talking a lot because I think this is important for everybody, and I want to see it get to a spot where everyone wins. So I will put it on hold today. And trust me, these ain't like tears of sadness. It is overwhelmed a little bit. So we will get there, and with that, I will hold the bill today.
All right, thank you. With that, I think we'll take a, STLTV will take a 5-minute recess. All righty, we are back, and we're moving through the agenda now to committee discussions, because we didn't have any resolutions for review, did we, Madam Clerk?
No, we have none.
Okay, so our first committee discussion, item number 1, the annual tax increment financing TIF report. This is where we will review and discuss the presentation from St. Louis Development Corporation, SLDC, for their annual TIF report that is required by Missouri state statute. So we will turn it over to you all. Thank you for being here.
Oh, maybe yours is like on battery or something.
Andrew Knopp. Okay, we'll just pass it forward, back and forth. All right, so Andrew Knopp, SLDC.
Madeline Swanstrom, Incentive Compliance Manager at SLDC.
Okay, so as we kind of touched upon there, this is our tax increment financing update for the fiscal year 2023. This is required by state statute, section 99865, requires that we hold a public hearing every 5 years after approval of each TIF, and every 5 years thereafter.
to determine if the project is making satisfactory progress. So it doesn't mean that we do this once every 5 years. It means we do it every year for TIFs that have a 5-year anniversary. Also required by statute, we had to notify the public of this hearing, so we did that on November 18th and the 25th, as well as December 2nd and 9th. We have the Exhibit A, which was sent to all of you and published in the Daily Record, is our public notice of the TIFs that we'll be talking about today and their financial status, as well as if they're active, retired, or terminated. And then the final thing that we are required to do each year is submit annual reports to Missouri Department of Revenue. So we did that. Madeline and I did that, and the deadline for that was November 15th. So, all right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so this beginning section really is just something we provide out of courtesy, not required, but just to give a kind of higher level view of TIFs overall. So on the left side, we've got just some statistics. So 146 redevelopment plans have been established, in history for TIFs. It doesn't mean that all of them ended up being active. Some, kind of fall away. 124 actually executed redevelopment agreements, and 44 of those have been either retired or terminated. On the right side, just to get an idea of things kind of construction-wise in progress or not, substantially complete, basically complete, 129 of the TIFs, partially complete, just 5, and then 3 are under construction. And if you're trying to do math on here, it's a little bit hard to do because some TIFs have multiple RPAs, and so we kind of do that in these statistics as well. Next slide. So we had a little chart here showing TIFs approved by year. So obviously early 90s, and there weren't many. It was allowed, but there weren't many. From 2000 to 2010, there were a lot of TIFs given out, and in recent years, there's been significantly less. So that's kind of the takeaway from this. And if you have the color on this chart, you'll see how many have been retired. So obviously a lot of the older ones. Okay, so let's get into the anniversary project. So for 25-year anniversary projects, there's just 5 of those. And so since, as Zach mentioned earlier, TIFs only run 23 years, anything that's got a 25 year is going to be, it's going to be either retired because it paid off or retired because the time has elapsed. So there's 5 of them. Convention Headquarters Hotel, which was dissolved in January 2021. Shoto Compton Industrial Center, which was dissolved in December 2021. Argyle Garage, which was dissolved December 2022. Edison Building, dissolved 2017. Robert E. Lee Building, it was dissolved in 2009. And I'll pass it over to Madeline to talk about 20-year.
So next we'll talk, I think it's working now.
Okay.
Next we'll talk about 20-year anniversary projects. So the first one we have is Bell Lofts, which was actually the renovation of 2 buildings downtown at 920 Olive Street and at 1000 Locust Street at the total cost of $12.2 million. The 2 buildings included 44 apartments and first-floor commercial space. 920 Olive Street was until recently occupied by Bailey's Restaurant, and 1000 Locust is occupied by the Willow Event Space and the $2.6 million TIF note will mature in 2027. The unpaid principal amount is $2.6 million. So moving on, we have the Hampton Inns and Suites at the Highlands. This project is at 5700 Oakland Avenue in the Cheltenham neighborhood and includes the construction of a new 5-story, 121-room hotel, plus a 120-seat restaurant, once in what was once the site of the old arena. The project cost was $14 million in 2006. The hotel is still running, and the restaurant operator currently is Max Local Eats. The $2.4 million TIF note was scheduled to mature in 2027, but it has been paid off, and the special allocation fund will be dissolved in early 2024. All right, and next we have Railway Lofts. This is a project at 1619 Washington Avenue in downtown West, which includes the renovation of a historic 9-story building for 40 loft residential condominiums at the cost of $3.2 million, with 41 indoor parking spaces and first floor commercial space, which is now occupied by Maxine Salon and SF Studios. The $1.9 million TIF note is scheduled to mature in 2027. The unpaid principal amount is $1.8 million. The next project we have is the security building. This commercial office project at 400 Locust Street in downtown includes the renovation of the 11-story, 111,000 square foot building. The current primary tenant is the Lawrence Group, architects and developers. The $3.3 million TIF note matures in 2027. The unpaid principal amount is $3 million, about $3 million. Catlin Townhomes, these were a series of townhomes on West Pine and North Boyle in the Central West End. 7 townhomes that were built for the cost of $2.8 million. It was estimated that the homes would sell for $400,000 to $470,000. The project was completed in 2007, and the $432,000 TIF note is scheduled to mature in 2027, but all obligations have been retired, and the special allocation fund is scheduled to be dissolved in early 2024. Okay. Next, we have Shenandoah Place, which is the renovation of 3 four-family buildings on Minnesota Avenue in the Fox Park neighborhood. They were turned into 6 condominiums. The project was completed in 2004 and included the development of a parking lot and behind the buildings at 3110 Shenandoah Avenue. Each unit was expected to sell for $200,000. The $254,700 TIF notes are scheduled to mature in 2027, and the unpaid principal amount is $213,698. Next, we have Westgate Lofts. This is at 410 North Jefferson at Locust Street in downtown West, and consists of a 5-story warehouse that was converted to 64 residential condominiums and parking for $12.8 million. Each unit was sold for an average of $150,000 when completed in 2006. The $1.7 million TIF note is scheduled to mature in 2027. The unpaid principal amount is around $1.6 million. Next, we have the Washington Avenue Apartments at 1133 Washington Avenue at Tucker Boulevard in downtown. And this consists of a 9-story former Days Inn hotel that was converted to 127 apartments with first floor commercial and related parking. Part of the first floor is currently occupied by Havana's Cuban Restaurant. The project cost $9.9 million and was completed in 2007. The $1.1 million TIF note is scheduled to mature in 2027. The unpaid principal amount is $813,000. Next, we have University Lofts near SLU. This was formerly occupied by the Warehouse of Fixtures, and it is a 6-building complex on 12 parcels of land located at 3701 Forest Park Avenue and 4708 to 58 Laclede Avenue on the west side of Spring Avenue. These Midtown properties were renovated in 2007 at the cost of $53.5 million. The building at 3701 Forest Park Avenue is now occupied by the Aquinas Institute of Theology. The building at the other buildings are now known as the City Lofts on Laclede and include 131,000 square feet of apartments and 20,000 square feet of retail, now occupied by Pickleman's Gourmet Cafe. The TIF note is around $6 million and is scheduled to mature in 2028. The unpaid principal amount is around $4.7 million.
Okay, so 15-year anniversary projects. There are 13 of these that I will go. Can we go to the next slide? So the first one is 4900 Manchester. This was a construction of a 50,000 square foot industrial building in the Kings Oak neighborhood at a cost of $6.4 million. It's completed in 2010. It's had a variety of tenants, including the Taylor Community Science Resource Center. The TIF itself was in the amount of $1.3 million, issued in 2011, expected to mature in 2031, and currently the unpaid principal amount is just over $1.1 million. Next, we've got 374 South Grand. This is RPA 1 of that TIF, which was the renovation of the 3-story former Union Plaza building in the Grand Center neighborhood into 129 student housing units. A little bit of ground floor retail, parking at a cost of $32 million. Project was completed in 2010. The TIF note is just over $3.3 million and expected to mature in 2031. Unpaid principal amount of $3.3 million as of the end of fiscal year. 3693 Forest Park Ave, or otherwise known as the Spring Street Lofts, again near SLU. This Midtown project, 3-story building, 48 apartments, 7,000 square feet of commercial space at a cost of just under $12.5 million. It's completed in 2010. The TIF note was for just over $1.3 million, again scheduled to mature in 2031. The unpaid principal amount is just over $1.1 million, and the commercial space is currently occupied by a wellness and Anthropedia Academy. Midtown Lofts. So this is a renovation of a 17,000 square foot 2-story building on Locust in the Midtown neighborhood. 10,000 square feet of ground floor commercial, three residential units above that. It's completed in 2010 with a TIF note of just over or under $800,000, and it should mature in 2032. The unpaid principal amount is $389,000. REO, so another renovation project on Locust in Midtown as well. So just under 13,000 square feet of commercial space, 11,000 square feet of residential space, which was about 10 units. $5 million project. Current tenants are Midtown Back and Neck Center and the John Bauman Safeco. The $642,000 TIF is scheduled to mature in 2032 and has an unpaid principal of $554,000. Shoto Crossing. So the phase 1 of this project was the rehabilitation of 120,000 square feet used truck center on Shoto for 2 commercial uses, Sheet Metal Local 36 headquarters and also Dynalabs. It's a $22 million project, just under $2 million TIF, which is scheduled to mature in 2032. The phase 2 was a new construction, 5,000 square foot retail center, also in Shoto, but that was never implemented. Currently, or as of the end of fiscal year, unpaid principal amount was just under $1.4 million. Ford Building, Downtown West, renovation of 14-story building into 39 rental units and 6,000 square feet of retail space on the ground floor. It's an $11.3 million project. The TIF was $943,000, scheduling to mature in 2032, and the unpaid principal amount is just over $800,000. 1225 Washington, another Downtown West project, renovation, 7-story warehouse, converted into retail, office, and 45 residential units at the cost of just under $22 million. It's completed in 2011. The $489,000 TIF is scheduled to mature in 2035, and the unpaid principal is $377,000. Taylor Carey, industrial site, 9 acres on North Broadway, and renovation of 2 industrial buildings at the cost of $11.5 million. Tenants are Rabin Truck Tire Co. and Gedeke Co., which became Broadway Ford Truck Sales. The $4 million TIF is scheduled to mature in 2032, and unpaid principal is just over $4 million.
Okay, so next we'll cover the 10-year anniversary projects. We have 4 of those. The first one is Cary Avenue, which was a 36-acre site on the North Riverfront, bounded by Cary Avenue, East 3rd Street, Adelaide Avenue, and Bulwer Avenue. It was formerly a Union Pacific rail yard. The overall estimated project cost was $25.8 million for the 2-phase development. Phase 1 was completed in 2016 by Green Street Development and includes a $15 million industrial facility occupied by Central States Thermo King. Phase 2 is still being marketed for another use. The TIF note is just over $1 million and matures in 2036 and was primarily used to construct a new street to access the site. The unpaid principal amount is around $700,000. Next, we have 706 Market. This was the renovation of the General American Life Insurance Building, which is a mid-century modern building completed in 1977 and designed by an internationally known architect, Philip Johnson. The 130,000 square foot, 6-story building was renovated in 2016 by Coman Group as the headquarters for Spire at the cost of $46.4 million. There are about 870 jobs at the property. A TIF note that was just over $7 million was issued in 2017 and will mature in 2036. The unpaid principal amount is just over $5.3 million. Okay. So I'll also cover the terminated TIFs that have an anniversary here. So these are terminated TIFs that have an anniversary, and they were, terminated for a variety of reasons. The Argyle Garage was dissolved in 2022. Robert E. Lee was dissolved by the Special Allocation Fund was dissolved in 2009. In 721 Olive, the chemical building. Let's see, this one, the redevelopment agreement was never fully executed and the project was terminated in 2015. But right now it's being proposed for another development as a Marriott hotel. And the Sky Wheel was a proposal for the construction of a 175-foot Sky Wheel plus a restaurant and office space on Laclede's Landing at the cost of $11.7 million. Redevelopment ordinances were approved, but a redevelopment agreement was never executed and the project was never implemented. 3150 South Grand Boulevard, that's in the Tower Grove East neighborhood, and it was a proposed demolition of the former Hamiltonian Savings and Loan Building and the construction of a 2-story, 23,000 square foot retail and office building at the cost of $4.3 million. The project was approved in 2009 but was never implemented, and the Special Allocation Fund was dissolved in 2011. And in 2014, Ordinance 69818 was approved authorizing a 10-year tax abatement for the renovation of the existing mid-century modern building, which was renovated at the cost of $3.3 million for the Rooster restaurant. Hadley Dean, that was scheduled to be renovated at the cost of $4 million, and there was a $950,000 TIF that was approved in 2009. Real estate tax abatement was approved for the property in 2012. In 2015, the property owner completed the project and elected to implement the 10-year tax abatement rather than the TIF, and the TIF was terminated in 2019. The upper floors of the property are currently occupied by Cool Fire Studios, St. Louis, and the first floor is occupied by El Burro Mexican Restaurant.
Okay, so just to close this out, we've got TIFs that have been retired. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so 4 of them. As I mentioned previously, Convention Headquarters Hotel was dissolved in 2021. Shoto Compton Industrial Center was dissolved in 2021. Edison Building, 2017. And then finally the Barton Street Lofts, which is in Soulard, renovation of a 3-story former church and school into condos, just under $3 million project cost. The units in the project named Tabernacle Loft sold for an average of $180K each, completed in 2005. It was a $370,000 TIF note. It was scheduled to mature in 2027, but the obligations were retired and dissolved in 2021. And then we just have the exhibit that we posted in the Daily Record and distributed. So that's it. If there's questions, happy to answer them.
Okay, great. Let's see, Alderman Browning.
Thank you for that update. I really appreciate you all being here to provide this legally mandated report. I would love to just, for the public's education, have a little bit of information on. We hear tax abatement and TIF constantly confused, and I think it really there is a huge difference between the two. So I was wondering if you could speak to the difference of when we use a TIF and why a TIF might be used versus a tax abatement.
So yes, they are very different. One thing that's different is the time of the incentive itself. So tax increment financing for 23 years allows the foregoing, or it allows property taxes and half of economic activity taxes that would normally be collected to be earmarked for the paying of a TIF note. Whereas tax abatement just foregoes new taxes over the course of some period. It could be, up to 25 years. TIFs are always 23 years. Generally, TIFs are used more so when capital is needed up front for, ideally things like significant infrastructure improvements or something like that. So tax abatement is essentially a cost savings over time. Tax increment financing by, you all as a public body allowing for that legally to happen. They can take that note and take it to a financial institution to get some sort of capital up front. We basically allow those funds to be channeled in that way. So that's kind of generally the main differences between the two.
Okay, and I noticed that a lot of these buildings are more or less rehabs, existing buildings that there's not a lot of, or did I see any new construction in there?
There's some industrial, new construction, but yeah, generally historic rehab.
But just industrial.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all the questions I have for now.
That's a great question, Alderman Browning. Vice Chair Sanya.
Thank you. Sorry, excuse me, for the very detailed report. I can't imagine how long y'all spent digging through all the records from over 25 years to find them. So just thank you for your diligency on this. I just, similar to Alderman Browning's question, just for the folks at home, at the end you kind of stated, and this is the amount of principal revenue. Can you just kind of explain what that is and what that means for folks who are listening at home?
Let me take it. So yeah, so as I alluded to, this allows for basically a debt instrument to exist. And so, when you take out a loan, there's principal and then there's interest, and these work the same way. So, there might be a TIF note for $5 million, and over the course of time, the assessor assesses the property, economic activity taxes are collected, and then those are sent to pay off the principal, which is like the original note amount plus interest that accumulates over time. So, we get this question a lot. The unpaid principal is very big in a lot of these TIFs, and that would seem very bad, and in some ways it is, and is something to talk about. But what's unique about the state of Missouri is that those debt obligations are not actually the city's obligation, and so they become somebody else's obligation. And so the underperformance of the TIF, isn't great, but it isn't something that we would have to then take money out of the general fund to pay off.
Thank you. That's my only question.
That was a great question, Vice Chair Sanya, because that was a good point to make, right? Especially for our constituencies to know that it's not our obligation. It is an obligation, but it's not the city. So with that, I know this was advertised for intentionally for public comment and for public. Do we have anyone signed up to speak? Madam Clerk?
We have no speakers.
Okay. Is there anything else that you all would like to add for the greater good? Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all again so much for this very detailed report and for, again, answering the questions. It's just always good. It's a very good way to engage our constituency because we can share this information since it's being recorded in the hearing. And we will look forward. Some of this discussion will be continued when we have the bills in our next hearing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have any written testimony?
We have none.
Okay. With that, all members were present. Any announcements?
Just want to announce us for getting through.
All right, so it sounds like we're not going to have any objection to adjourn. I'll accept to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Previous row, hearing no objection. Everyone have a blessed day.